This being Monday, August 5th at 6:32, I'm calling the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. Councilor Tallman has graciously joined us so that we have a quorum. We can start on time. Councilor Lisi is to my right, and I'm Councilor Vacan. So welcome. And I know many of you are here for our second item. And because I have a guest making the quorum, we will leave the minutes on the table for the moment.
Sure.
And so I would entertain a motion to take up item 2 and open the public hearing.
So
Motion,
moved.
so moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we are now on item 2, which was filed by Councilor McGee. And some of you have been here before on this matter, I believe. And this order was filed May 15th, ordered that permanent speed humps be installed on Bemis Road. And we have our engineer who's graciously agreed to attend, Bob Parent, who will first go over the review of the street, the areas of speed humps, and give us feedback for the purposes of our public hearing. It will then be open to members of the neighborhood and the community to make comments either in favor of or in opposition to or otherwise on the speed humps. Okay? So Bob, if you would like to come in. He's facing it to the audience, but I think if we need something, he can tilt it our way if you need something closer. That won't come off, but you can, yeah. It's a little awkward, but it does work.
So a couple of things. One, my name is Bob Parent. I'm the city engineer. I've been with the city for about a year. As I understand it, discussion of speed humps on Bemis Road goes back a couple of years now, and there were some temporary speed humps that have been put in on the lower portion of Bemis Road. And then this year, while I was here, there were some additional temporary speed humps put in on the upper portion of Bemis Road. Just wanted to briefly recap. Most people from a distance can probably see the layout of the streets here, but you probably can't read the numbers. The numbers in black are the posted speed limits. So if you're familiar heading down the hill, as you turn onto Bemis, the speed limit is 20 miles per hour. It goes up to 30, then it drops to 15, and continues 15 all the way down to the bottom of the hill. And that's what's posted on the speed limit signs right now. Heading in the other direction, speed limit starts at 15, same thing, it drops to 30, it continues on 30 across the interstate, and then drops to 20 as you head towards East Hampton Road. DPW, a couple of years ago, and again this last year, did a couple of speed studies where we count the volume of traffic and we count the speed of traffic. What we found on the lower portion of Bemis Road 2 years ago was there's a term that's used as the 85th percentile speed. It's that speed it's the number that's, it basically means that most of the people are driving at or below. Not the average people, not the fastest person, because you're always going to get one person that will drive 60 miles an hour down the roadway. But 85% or more of the people are driving at that speed limit or below, that speed or below. So we found that the 85th percentile speed heading up the hill was 31 miles per hour in a 15 mile an hour zone. We found that the speed heading down the street, 85th percentile speed, was 33 miles per hour. So clearly people were driving over the speed limit. On the upper portion of Bemis Road, the same type of thing. We saw the 85th percentile speed heading towards East Hampton Road being 38 miles per hour, and the speed heading away from East Hampton Road being 35 miles per hour. So again, clearly people are not driving the speed limit. They're driving closer to it in this 30 mile per hour area, but they're clearly not driving it across the entire corridor. The other thing I did want to mention is that DPW is really neutral on whether there should or shouldn't be speed humps in this location. There are pluses and there are minuses. And you know, one of the minuses, they're relatively expensive. It costs about $6,000 to build one speed hump, and to build it to last, because you actually have to remove the asphalt down to the road base and build it back again and key it into the roadway. and then feather those speed humps out over fairly wide distance, because we're not creating speed bumps where people have to stop and you get an abrupt bump up and down, but we're creating a hump that encourages people to slow down and stay at a slower speed until they hit the next speed hump versus speed bump. So that's one of the big negatives. Positives is they can encourage people to slow down. Do they make people drive the speed limit? Typically not, but they do typically cause a reduction in speed. When we put the temporary speed humps in at both locations, we saw a reduction in speed, again, the 85th percentile speed of about 7 miles per hour. So for instance, at this location, instead of people driving 38 miles per hour, they're driving 31 miles per hour. Instead of driving 37, they were driving 28 miles per hour. So it had a noticeable impact. It didn't make them necessarily drive the speed limit, but it did have them, reduce their operating speed. The other thing we had to look at, because the city has an ordinance that says where you can and where you can't put speed humps. You don't want to put speed humps in streets that have a lot of vehicles on them, because if you're driving down Main Street or you're driving down another high volume roadway, although you might want people to drive slower, you don't want to have a major impact on the safety and the ability to put a lot of vehicles down that street. So the threshold is 3,000 vehicles or less per day. So we were asked, does it meet that standard? Yes, it does. The average number of vehicles are in the 1,000 to 2,000 vehicles per day. The other criteria that the city has is that it has to be a street where the posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour or less. Again, if you have a 45 mile per hour posted speed, you might want people to drive slower, but it's not the roadway you want to put speed humps on, because it's not, speed humps are intended to be in that 20 to 30 mile an hour type of roadway, not in a higher speed roadway. So Bemis Road does meet both of those criteria. We were then asked, if we were to put speed humps in with the goal of reducing traffic, where would we recommend the speed humps be installed? And that's what this second figure shows. And one of the things I did want to mention, I wasn't with the city at the time that we put this temporary speed humps down in the lower section of Bemis Road, but my understanding was there was a fairly significant amount of redirection of traffic, because the distance that you have to drive heading up through the subdivision is about the same regardless of whichever of these streets that you drive. So it's been recounted to me that what happened was there was a fair amount of traffic that would take a left as opposed to taking a right to avoid the speed humps. And we don't really want to encourage that to happen. So we don't want to put everything on one street, so there's an easy way for people to get around that and maybe fix one problem but create another problem. So you see these black dots, and maybe there might be one, I don't think there's two, but maybe one dot too many. We typically like to have speed humps every 500 to 600 feet if you're going to put them in, because if you space them too far apart, then people start to pick up their speed again, and you don't kind of manage that speed at your goal of the 25 to 30 miles per hour that you're trying to get with the speed hump. So that's why you see the spacing on the upper section of Bemis, and then when you see the spacing on the lower section of Bemis, one thing I want to point out here is that once you start to get into the real steep hill and start getting in the curves, you don't want to put speed humps there from a safety standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint. Although you might still want to slow the traffic down, it just becomes incompatible with something like a speed hump. So we stayed away from that portion of Bemis. The goal here, for instance, and I should know all the side street names, and I apologize because I don't, is to put one bump or hump to the left and one to the right, so that there wasn't a big incentive for drivers to take the side street and avoid all the speed humps. Regardless, they would hit one. If they go straight like they do now, they would hit two. Again, sort of a trade-off of not making it too easy for them to avoid the speed humps. Might there still be some redirection? There could be some people that say, I want to skip that one speed hump, so I'm going to take this route because it's really not much longer than taking a right versus taking a left. So, that could be an unintended consequence, is that we end up pushing some traffic. Sometimes it's like squeezing in a balloon. You solve one problem and it goes somewhere else. But that's the best we could do in terms of trying to address a speed reduction and at the same time minimize kind of the redirection of traffic within the subdivision streets. The spacing on the upper section is shown to be in that 500 to 600 foot range. None of these locations are cast in stone at this point. You know, we would have to get there in the field, take a look at driveways, take a look at landscaping, take a lot of different factors that would figure into exactly where the speed humps would be located, but approximate locations. Maybe we could drop that one here, and maybe people wouldn't, you know, pick up speed too much as they go underneath the interstate. But I don't think we could drop more than one to really achieve, if the goal is to try to reduce speed through this corridor, to do that with much less than 4 speed humps. So I think that's what I have to present.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And will you be available if some further
Definitely.
questions come up during the public hearing?
I can sit here if
Thank
you'd
you
like.
very much, sure, thank you. Okay, so I would like to open this up for public comment now, and you can come to express your opinion relative to the speed humps, whether you're in favor or opposed to them. You can also pose questions during the public hearing that perhaps our engineer will be able to address tonight or get back to us on if further review is needed. So in terms of process, you can just come up to the microphone in no particular order. If you tell us your name and address, then you can make your comments. If possible, if you can make your points in a couple of minutes, that will make it productive for everybody who's here, but we would give more time if somebody needs it. So whoever would like to approach the mic is welcome. And thank you all for coming down. Can you pull the button on the side toward you?
My name is Dexter Guess. I'm from 156 Bemis Road. I am the person that started the petition for the speed humps. And so I just wanted to say a couple of things. It looks like we're addressing speed, but our issue is not only speed, it is the numbers of vehicles crossing Bemis Road. I don't know, was there a count this time when you put the humps in? Last year, there were 900 cars a day crossing Bemis Road. That's a lot of cars. As far as the numbers of speed humps, I'm okay with it. I did have a neighbor call, a little bit concerned with the one after hillside on the downslope of the hill, because in the wintertime, coming up sometimes can be an issue, and you might get to the hump and not make it over. So that was something that was brought up to mind. In the traffic that comes across our street, there are numerous companies that use the street every day that don't belong in the neighborhood. One of them, can I use names? Okay, well, anyway, there are trucking companies. For instance, Aladco, who is a uniform company in town, goes up and down the street every day. Log Rolling, which we all know who they are. Summit View. There are actually food trailer trucks going up and down the street, which are probably going between Log Cabin and the other places down on Route 5. Mm-hmm. Landscapers. But we have a lot of people in the neighborhood that have landscapers there. Their trailers do make a lot of noise going over the humps. But if they belong there to do their job, then that should be all right. It's the ones crossing over just to get up and down the hill. Another thing, I know Riverside Industries in East Hampton is, a nonprofit and whatever, but I've seen 3 of their vans following each other up and down the hill. I'm sure there are people in our neighborhood they're picking up, but I don't know that. I think the other thing, we're talking about 30 miles per hour, and I tried it out today. I had my wife try it out today. And when I was going 30 miles an hour down the hill, I felt like I was going fast. When she drove by and I sat on the curb watching her, I thought, well, she's going a little fast, but not crazy. And some of the cars that go by are going by crazy. And we have the walkers, people walking every day, people bicycling, people, and it's just a situation that I don't think we should have. But do we not now have a ordinance to have 25 miles an hour speed limits all throughout Holyoke? Or is that, I mean, they can't get the signs up everywhere, but...
Right, and just to respond to that, they are posted at the entryways, and it is citywide for the thickly settled areas unless it's posted otherwise.
Okay.
So if it's posted 30, but I'll let Bob speak to that further when he answers your other question if he can.
Well, I'm all set. I just wanted to bring up what we see every day. The people in the section of Bemis Road that I live in see the speeders, and they see the numbers of cars. Further down, you don't get the speeders, but you get the numbers of cars. Just coming off of East Hampton Road, 141, the people at the top are not seeing speeders, they're seeing
Right.
cars.
Right.
So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Bob, if you do have the answer on the count?
Sure. The count that we did this year, we did May 1st to May 10th. And during that interval, we saw, on average, over that 10-day period, 9-day period, 700 vehicles per day. I'd be hesitant to try to do a direct comparison of 700 versus 900 and conclude that people were redirected, because it's hard to take two data points and come up with a conclusion. But maybe there was a bit of a reduced volume, but it was still a significant volume, again, during that period in May.
And did I describe the 25 mile per hour accurately?
You did, and I just wanted to point attention to what is actually out there today. So the way the ordinance works is if there's a posted speed limit, which the council has previously adopted site-specific speed limits for Bemis Road, and those are what are posted, the posted speed limit takes precedence. So in this location, the posted speed limit all the way from the bottom of Bemis up to this location is 15 miles per hour. The posted speed limit at the top is 20 miles per hour, which is actually greater than the thickly settled speed that applies universally if there is not a speed that's posted. So you're in better shape, actually. You have lower posted limits than the kind of the overall city ordinance.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? You can come on up.
Thank you. I'm in opposition of the speed humps.
Have your name and address, please.
Yes, that's the top of my list.
Okay.
My name is Roberta Dupree. I live at 162 Bemis Road. My neighbors right to the left of me. I have opposing views. I'd like to read what I prepared so I can get all my points in. Some of my points, I believe, have been answered by Bob, but maybe you could add more to this. So I originally signed the petition with a vague understanding of a potential outcome, which would be, now that I know, would be these speed humps on the street and where their locations are. I did not sign that knowing ahead of time where all this would be. If I knew, I would never have signed that petition. So one of my questions is this, and you answered it, about the daily volume of vehicles up and down the street or the speed of the vehicles? Now I understand is maybe both. There are a lot of Bemis residents that travel up and down the street daily, so that accounts for some of that number. There are service vehicles that make deliveries on the street. That accounts for the numbers. I'm not talking about the people that just go back and forth to their jobs that do not live in the area. There are lawn care vehicles that provide services on the street. That's understandable. And not to mention, the street is just a natural cut-through to Route 5 and Route 141, and we can't help that. If we are talking about the volume, which I heard, then there's nothing that I believe that a speed bump should be prepared and put on the roads, because a speed hump, it has nothing to do with volume, it has to do with speed. There are always many vehicles that will always, I'm sorry, I'm going to strike what I just said. Okay. If we're talking about the speed, then how many vehicles actually speed up and down Bemis Road? How many weeks was a speed survey conducted, and and what are the results? And you just mentioned some of that. Okay. So another concern I have is, what exactly does it mean to speed on Bemis Road or any road? I have a brother-in-law who is a retired lieutenant on the police force of Westfield. We had a discussion about this. This is a little aside. And he said that if the speed is posted at 30, going 31, 32 is not speeding up and down your street. If the speed is posted at 35, going 36, 37, 38 is not speeding and should not require a speed bump on that road. That's just an aside. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I live at 162 Bemis Road. I could stand at the end of my driveway and see the temporary speed humps that were just removed, up to my left where it was, and a few houses away on the right of my house where it was. My understanding is that there are a total of 5 speed humps being proposed. Not only do I oppose this logistically, but as a taxpayer, I oppose this personally. I have been informed that 1 permanent hump may be installed in front of my house. Emphatically, my family does not want any speed hump in front of our house. This and the other humps will increase an uneven flow of traffic, potentially make it more difficult to back out of our yard, and a hump in front of our home will diminish our privacy. Vehicles that are pulling any type of trailer, as Dexter mentioned, lawn care services with equipment, UPS, FedEx, etc., create very loud noise going over the humps. Therefore, the noise in front of our home will increase. I'm almost done. I'm respecting your time. It is my understanding that each speed hump, I thought it was going to cost more than I heard Bob say, but Bob just said $6,000 a hump, and 6 times 5 is $30,000, not to mention any maintenance that may eventually be required. I'm also wondering, and you also mentioned, so you said some things before I spoke, the effect on trash and plow trucks in any way. It is not under my purview to determine if the city of Holyoke can afford these extra dollars to be used to install permanent speed humps on Bemis Road. To me, this seems like a waste of city dollars when I'm sure attention needs to be given to other city concerns. I'm proposing the installation of signs that read thickly settled or speed checked by radar, or any other signage that is posted in neighborhoods that are thickly settled, including random police presence. So in summary, my family is opposed to any permanent speed humps on Bemis Road, and if the council should vote in favor of them, we are adamantly opposed to any speed hump in front of the expanse of our home. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can submit this if you want me to.
Sure. If you wish to leave it with us,
I do.
we can make
It's
it
okay.
part of the jacket.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to be heard on this matter?
Good evening. My name is Joseph Paul. I reside at 150 West Meadowview Road. I have been residing at that establishment for the last 56 years. I'm speaking in favor of the installation of any kind of instrument that will reduce the speed on Bemis Road. I'm not challenging the recommendation of the city engineer who's proposing 5. I think the expenditure of allegedly $30,000 is minimal in light of a life that it could be saved. School year beginning in September. The Holyoke Police Department has endeavored over the years by placing a cruiser at the intersection of Drake Lane and Bemis Road to reduce the number of speeders, and they've been very diligent about that. They are posted there usually between 7:30 in the morning to about 9 o'clock, and sometimes in the afternoon. I think it's imperative that the board or the city council, when I say board, I'm dating myself because at one time I used to appear before the board very often, to my chagrin. So in summary, I strongly urge that serious consideration be given to the number of speed bumps or humps that would be installed. I think it's an effort by the city to curtail the speeders and an effort to assure people that our kiddos who are out on Bemis Road waiting for the school bus. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Tapia, and I live on 157 Bemis Road. I would like to see the humps for safety reason. I do have a grandson that has 2 separate types of autism, sometimes bolts. We have runaway dogs. Last month, I found a child that had gotten away from her mama, and she didn't notice. Luckily, other neighbors were coming and they stopped, and we were able to bring the kid to safety. This gives chance to our elderly. We have elderly walking daily up and down with walkers, with their dogs. Some residents allow them to walk under grass. Some others do not want them walking under grass. We don't have sidewalks. If we have many elderlies, this is safety. To me, safety. I have my grandson. There's dogs. If it's not my 2 doors down, 2 little puppies running away, Tessa and I think it's Ella. If it's not, sometimes the guests, and sometimes my own daughter's a dog. It gives them a chance. If somebody's going slower, the pets and our elderly have a better chance. I do walk myself. And I have seen them doing 50 and 60, and I have recorded them and then reviewed. Of course, I erased them, but I have done it. I have sat on a chair outside. We have the Delaney minivan, which they're very polite, and they go down slow at a speed that is respectful. I don't mind that because it's respectful and it's safe for whoever is walking or crossing the street. Our neighbors walk slower, our elderly neighbors walk slower. They have slower reflexes. And my grandson, if he bolts, and I know that people are going slower, my grandson has a better chance because they can see him because they're going slower, not faster. And trust me, I've seen people going very fast, 50 and 60, going through the humps, and the passenger side goes I'm like, he probably got whiplash from that one. So, yes, I would like to see, and I do not mind in front of my house. If the windows are open, yes, you can hear a little bit more the noise, but if your windows are closed, no. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else interested in speaking?
Can I just say one?
Well, you can come back up in a minute.
My name is Alice Guess. I live at 156 Bemis Road, and I've done daycare for 36 years in my house, and we used to go on neighborhood walks, but since the volume of the traffic on the street has gotten so big, we had to quit, and we would go down the street to a park in another town just so the kids can get out and play. And recently our dog got away. She burst out the house, and the neighbors at the top of the street picked her up, and she was going to cross Route 141. And thankfully, she didn't get run over. We made prevention for her not getting out of the house or the yard. I have personally witnessed this cars speeding up the street. This is not only businesses and regular people with license plates from New York and Vermont, okay, they might be visiting, but what about the fire trucks, a hook and ladder, the big long fire trucks going up the street really fast? As soon as those two temporary speed bumps were removed, I witnessed them. And police cars, no lights going, the fire trucks, no lights going, and they go up and down the street really fast. Once in a while, we'll get a regular police car going slow, but that's only about once or twice a week. And just the other day, yesterday I was walking my dog, and I had to get off of I was walking in the road, she's on the grass. I had to physically get off of the road because this woman came about, I would say a foot away from me. And I thought, and she's on her cell phone, speeding down the street. And I don't know if I know the speed humps would do a big job in slowing down the people, because I've personally watched them. And some of my daycare kids came back for me to help watch them. I said, I told the parents, watch this. And so they would slow down for the first speed bump by my house. And then they would speed up the street. I said, watch, they're going to slam on their brakes. And they did. And it was a game. Every single person, until they realized the second speed bump was up there, because you couldn't really see it, driving. So, and the same thing would happen going down the street. They would go over the first speed bump and hot rod all the way up to our speed bump and slow down. And somebody actually skidded on the speed bump and moved it. And we were home, and we were in the backyard, and we heard that skid. But we didn't hear a crash, so we didn't even look. But that was the same time that the temporary speed hump was at an angle. And that's all I have to say. I'm for the speed humps.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has not spoken yet who wishes to speak?
Good evening.
Hi.
Yeah, my name is Antonio Lozada, and I live on 157 Bemis Road. I am in favor of the speed humps. I am a retired federal officer, and I see every single day, because I am retired, so I'm home. So I see every single day people speeding, people on their phones, doing things that they should not be doing, and they're doing it on that street, flying through. I know some people say something about signs. We do have signs. There is a big sign on the top of the road, and there is a big sign on the bottom of the road that says local traffic only. What that means to anybody? Nothing. People don't read. They don't care. If it's not on the cell phone, they're not reading it. So that's why we need those speed humps, so we can stop these people from doing what they're doing, which is wrong, no matter what. The noises from the speed hump, yeah, we're gonna hear it. But you know what? I prefer to hear the speed hump noise than hearing a crash to somebody, to a person, to a human being, or to an animal dying because of these people are speeding on our street, which they should not even be on the street, because most Most of them don't even live on that street. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else first time? Somebody for a follow-up?
When I heard Mary speak about children and elderly people walking the street, it reminded me of a couple things. One, I didn't mention that I'm on Bemis Road almost 40 years. I brought up children on Bemis Road. Bemis Road, the traffic, from what in my vision that I see, is no more than it used to be 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Some people will debate that, but when we say somebody is speeding on Bemis Road, we are not in their cars to see exactly what their speedometer is reading. So it might look like somebody's going 50, 60, which I never saw anybody go that way, that fast. They could be going 40, they could be going 30, and somebody might think they're going much faster. I also had a dog. I also walked the dog, and my family did, on Bemis Road. And I can't remember, other than during the winter when somebody got in an accident coming out of Mount Tom Ave and came onto my lawn, that there has ever been any accidents on Bemis Road. Maybe you could check the records, I'm not sure, but I've never encountered in 40 years accidents on Bemis Road. So I'm still opposed to it, and especially in front of my home, but I don't see a lot of the things that some people are saying that will affect people living finely on Bemis Road by putting in all those humps. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one additional thing in the public hearing. There was an email sent to Councilor McGee, and it was also copied to me from David Shannon at 180 Bemis Road regarding the proposal to put 5 speed humps on Bemis Road. This person writing said, "I'm writing to express my opposition to this proposal. While I do applaud efforts to eliminate and slow down cut-through traffic on Bemis Road, I feel that the installation of speed humps, especially 5, is not the answer. 1 trades a speed problem for a noise problem for those who live adjacent to the humps. When the temporary humps were installed, large trucks, school buses, pickup trucks with trailers created a lot of noise going over the humps. Are noise barriers going to be installed? 2, while the temporary hump was installed, I observed many drivers who came to a complete stop before going over. This could cause an accident. Once the drivers were used to the humps, many did not slow down at all. Many drivers who did slow down then gunned their engines to regain speed once over the hump. 3, the hump near the intersection of West Meadowview created a problem for drivers heading up the hill from West Meadowview. This will be greater in the coming winter months with snow, ice on the road, and snowbanks along the edge. 4, the DPW does a very good job of keeping Bemis Road clear in the winter. I wonder how the installation of 5 speed humps would affect this operation. I feel this proposal will cause more problems than it solves and be a waste of taxpayer funds." And I just wondered, Bob, in regards to the question raised about the plowing, was there any feedback in that regard relative to speed humps in general?
Certainly, it's more difficult to plow streets that have speed humps on them if it is not speed, because your blade has to rise up and over, and your blade also doesn't bend with the transition on the edge of the speed hump when you come down to the pavement. So the edge of the roadway at that location will be a little bit less clear than it typically would be. So, there is an impact on the ability to keep the road as clear as you can if the road is completely flat.
Mm-hmm. And if you are aware, did we get any other feedback from the police department at all?
I haven't specifically reached out to them. I haven't got any feedback, but I can do so.
Counselor Lisi? Can I just check I just want to be sure anybody who wished to speak in the public hearing portion has been able to do so. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Larry Dupree, 162 Bemis Road. In addition to the plows, the school buses going up and down, when you have 5 bumps, school buses are going to have to stop because school buses will stop. They don't drive over. So I'm also concerned about the maintenance cost. You know anything about that? And a $30,000 expenditure for the humps. I mean, you know, the plows in the winter are very good. I mean, they get constant plowing, but that's constant covered going over the humps. I would assume there's going to be a problem with the maintenance as well. So I'm concerned about school buses, snow plows, that type of thing, the cost and overall effect. So we continue to be opposed to it, and we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. So I had a question about the temporary speed humps that were put in place. Do they mimic the size and shape of the speed humps that we would be installing today, or are they more akin to the speed bumps of yesteryear?
They're somewhat in between. They're not as wide as, I mean, they're not as narrow as a speed bump, you know, but they are not as long as typically a speed hump, once it's installed, is 10 to 12 feet wide. A more gradual transition. So again, you're trying to reduce the traffic, but you're not trying to stop the traffic. So drivers become aware of the hump. They know that in order to drive and to be comfortable driving over that hump, they have to drive at a slower speed. But the intent is to provide a smoother transition than the temporary humps that we could put in and put out. As you saw, they don't last as a temporary hump forever because they start to fall apart and the attachments to the road, you know, break down over time. So they are more obtrusive and they generate more noise and create more disruption than the long-term humps will.
The humps are going to be less of an intrusion, generate less noise. The actual humps that we would install, not the temporary structures,
Right.
would be less intrusive, generate less noise.
They're less abrupt, they're less likely to create as much noise. Landscapers with light trailers go over them still. If they drive faster than they should, will their equipment bounce up and down on the trailer and create noise? I'm certain that it will.
And then just want to revisit the 85 percentile numbers that were
Sure.
generated. So at the bottom of the hill, we have in one direction 31 miles per hour and 33 miles per hour. So you're saying 85% of the cars that are driving by, 85% or more, are driving at that speed?
Or
Or
slower.
lower.
Or slower. The percentile is the speed of which 85% of the drivers are driving at or below.
And is that in the area that's marked as 15 miles per hour, or is that in the area that would be unmarked and at our 25 mile per hour? Do you want me to switch it back?
If you wouldn't mind. So my understanding is when the speed device was installed, I think it was 2 years ago now, it was installed near or in front of number 91 Bemis Road, which is what that designation of number 91 means. At that location going up the hill, we recorded a 31 mile per hour 85th percentile. Again, 85% of the people were 31, 30, 28, 29, et cetera, or lower. Some people, 15 out of 100, were driving faster than 31. That location going up the hill is posted at 15 miles per hour. That same location going down the hill where we saw 33 miles per hour as the 85th percentile is also posted at 15 miles per hour.
So we're clocking 85% or more vehicles driving at 33 and below in an area that is posted 15 miles an hour.
That's correct.
Okay. And then these traffic counts and speed counts were taken last May?
The counts that you see to the left-hand side were taken last fall, I believe. The ones that I talked about, the effect of the speed humps on the left-hand side of the interstate, were taken May 1st to May 10th of this year.
And so do you know roughly when our 25 mile per hour citywide speed limit was posted? Would you think it would be before or after that?
It would have been before we put in the temporary speed humps this year. I believe it was posted late last fall, early winter time, in that time frame. Part of the problem, and one of the problem with speeding is people drive the speed that they feel comfortable driving. They don't pay attention to the speed limit signs most of the time. The only thing that really corrects that is to change the level of comfort that people feel when they're driving, and speed humps tends to do that. It makes people feel less comfortable driving at that same speed. The other thing that can change it is enforcement. The problem with enforcement is it has to be nearly continuous for it to have a long-term effect. So, you either try to change the feel of the road to cause people to want to drive slower, or you try to enforce the speed limit if you can.
So then my final question would be, given that the speed humps are broader and take up more space, and we usually have paintings on the ground that basically alert you to the hump coming up, do you think we could get away with 3 speed humps on Bemis to reduce the traffic speed as opposed to 5? 5 does seem a problem for emergency vehicles, school buses. I think the residents raised a number of good concerns. I myself was very resistant. I live on Reservation Road, and we don't have sidewalks on Reservation Road. We have a lot of people walking up and down to get into Mount Tom, and I was always resistant to putting the speed humps in because of emergency access. But once we did get them, we have noticed an impact in the neighborhood, and they don't feel very intrusive. So we're getting the desired impact of slower traffic patterns. The emergency vehicles don't seem to have to come to any sort of abrupt stop to climb over those. The plowing is still, it's not perfect on our street, but it's pretty good. So I'm leaning in favor of the speed humps, but I do feel like 5 feels a bit cumbersome as someone who would drive up and down the road. Do you think that 3 could achieve the desired operation speed reduction?
I could certainly support starting with 3, and that we may find that 3 gets the job done, because driver behavior sometimes is a little bit tricky to anticipate. If we went with the approach of 3, it's pretty clear we'd want to put 2 to the left-hand side of the interstate on that section and 1 to the right-hand side of the intersection. I'd probably drop the one on the, I know you and I should be flipping these things back and forth, but thank you very much. What I would do is, if we started with 3, I would drop the rightmost speed hump, because that's in a location that we're already starting to drop down the hill steeper than I'd like for a speed hump location. And it also would help to reduce the potential redirection, because everybody driving up Bemis or any of the side streets of Bemis would still hit at least 1 speed hump to the east side of the interstate. So there's nothing to be gained by trying to get around a speed hump, because you can't get around that one.
This would be the one that you're...
That would be the one that I would drop, and then I would drop 1 to the left-hand side. And as I said, that may be. We didn't want to put 1 directly under the interstate for lots of different reasons, so that kind of forced us to put 1 on the left-hand side, 1 on the right-hand side. But if we took the 1 on the left-hand side, 1 of them out, and spaced those out a little bit, maybe we're not at the ideal 500 to 600 feet, maybe we're 700 feet, but that may be all that it takes. And certainly will have a benefit. Whether it'll have as much, it's hard to say.
Thank you.
Councilor Tallman?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks, Bob, for coming down and explaining this to the residents here and the city as a whole. I'm very familiar with this area. I've lived on Hendel Drive for 25 years, and Bemis Road is within probably 50 yards of my house. I'm up and down that road all the time, and I actually delivered mail up there for over 6 years and saw a lot of different traffic, a lot of speeding, and I did actually see 1 or 2 accidents on that street in the past few years. There was one of our neighbors up on Mount Tom was coming down Mount Tom Avenue, a girl was coming down on her cell phone or coming up Bemis Road, not even paying attention, and hit her. And luckily, it was pretty damaged. Her car totaled it, but she was okay. But it's people not paying attention a lot on that street. It definitely is a cut-through street. I've seen that. Even today I see that, people going up in there. Instead of coming down Northampton Street and going up to 91 to East Hampton Road, people are cutting right there to take that shortcut up to 141, and that's normal. I don't know how you stop that. It's going to continue to happen. We do have signs, as stated, our neighbor stated, that there's local traffic only, but you can't put barriers on the street. Anybody is allowed to drive on a public street. You can't just say, hey, you're not supposed to be here. We can't cut through here. Any street is available to anybody that has a vehicle and a licensed car. When I got the notice, and I want to thank Mr. Guest for putting this out there, and I know one of his neighbors been wanting this for years, Mr. Swindell up on 168 Bemis, would be very happy to have some speed humps up there. As a matter of fact, at one time, there was a car put on Bemis Road to slow down the traffic, and the police said, don't put your car there because it could get hit. But that actually did slow traffic down. So speed humps, it's not something that it's a cure-all, but I believe it's something that can work for that area. And as the engineer stated, you got to have them spaced out in a certain way. And hopefully we can work it out where maybe certain neighbors won't have to put it right in front of their house if it's bothersome to them. Other neighbors said they don't mind it in front of their house. We could work that out, I think. And I go along with my colleagues saying that I think 5 is too many. I really believe we could get around with 3, possibly 4. I looked on the number, the one at 93 Bemis, that's going down the hill, and we heard earlier, you're getting up that hill when it's snowy. It's really hard to get up that hill sometimes. So I'll cancel that one out, and I would definitely have one underneath the highway on the right side, maybe right past the ball field, where the playground there, Kenny Field, the one maybe at 115 and 115 Bemis, 115 Hillview, because if you put it above Meadowview, that people won't be cutting down Meadowview to try to take a shortcut. I mean, I don't know why they would do it anyways. It would take it longer, actually, to get down and go around to Bemis. So I think 3 would be a good number, and I think the neighbors would be willing to talk. I mean, this is just a preliminary. My concern, too, was the cost. As you said, that's a lot of money for a speed hump. I didn't realize it was $6,000. The temporary ones worked good this year and last year, I believe. There was trouble with the upper temporary one. People going over so much, we actually had to take that out because it was shifting. We fixed it, and then they took it out. And then shortly after, they took the other one out. But the temporary ones, they seem to shift a little bit with the traffic going over them, the heavy trucks and stuff, and they sort of moved a little bit. But the part of as speed hump and not being as really intrusive as the speed humps, the bumps, I think is a good thing for the neighbors to know that, people can take their time and go over these. And my concern also is that the traffic, the police vehicles, the fire trucks, DPW, especially the school buses, will have to slow down. And my neighbors see that all the time, and I see it sometimes. You see some of these school buses even coming down around the curve are going fast. Some of them are running a little bit late, so they got to make up time. And it's really unfortunate that you see a school bus with either children or no children on it going faster than the speed limit. There's been talk earlier about the speed signs up there. I know you stated the one on the top is 20, and then just about 30 yards down, right on the corner of West Meadowview, it says 30. And we've been trying to change that, and for some reason it's in the books as 30, and I don't think you can change that. And now that we have the sign there on that upper part, people do go past, I believe. I'm not saying they're going to go in 50 or 60. It's hard for me to judge that if somebody's driving. But when you're on the street and you see the cars driving by, they clearly are going past the speed limit, and whether it's 35 or 40 or 45. So I as a neighbor and as a city official, I think it's important that we have some kind of device to slow down traffic in that area. You're not going to stop. I don't believe you're going to lessen the traffic. I think you're going to slow it down a bit. There's no way you're going to get people that are going to say, well, I'm not going up Bemis now because there's 2 speed humps or 3 speed humps there. I don't think they're going to go all the way down to 141 to go up. They're still going to go up and down Bemis. But I think safety-wise, I think it's important to slow the traffic down for the people that are walking there. There's no sidewalks, people that walk their dogs, and there are people that walk there every day, elderly people that have to walk in the road. And I think slowing the traffic down with maybe three speed humps in that area will really make that neighborhood a lot safer, and that street a lot safer for everybody.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern?
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. And now that we know Councilor Tomlin is going up and down the road all day, it's the cause of the problem, right, Bob?
Yes.
Just a couple quick questions. You've done a fine job of, I think, setting the table and answering questions and answering questions as we go. Each speed hump comes with 2 signs, 2 warning signs in each direction.
That's correct, as well as paint on the hump itself.
And the paint, is that done, repainted annually?
It should be, but it hasn't always been.
Because I've seen a couple streets where when the paint disappears,
Right.
it's very difficult to know that
Right.
speed hump is there. When a speed hump, a road is repaved, and I think Bemis needs to be repaved soon. I know there's been some work on the water line, some other work done. When a road is repaved, what happens to a speed hump?
It depends on what type of repaving is being done.
If the road is taken out, down to the bottom,
you may have to take the speed hump out fully and put it back when you're done.
and it would cost the same amount of money to put it back in?
It'll cost a similar amount of money. The plus side of it is, right now, if the city was to put the speed humps in today, we cannot use Chapter 90 money to build speed humps where there aren't humps today. But if we're replacing them or reinstalling them as part of a road paving project that we can use Chapter 90 money for, we could fund putting them back as part of that project.
Okay. And I think my most important question is drainage. We all know a big part of Bemis' problem is it's the cut-through and the steep grade of the road itself, both during storms during the warmer months, but more important, storms during the winter months. What type of drainage is necessary so that there aren't ice dams at the humps?
Well, the humps don't go all the way to the edge of the roadway, so you still have a gap, you still have the gutter line that the drainage flows down. But we'd have to look at it carefully, and for me, the best way to do it is get out there during a major rainstorm and see where the water goes, just to make certain the street in its current condition has most of the water going down the gutter. If that's the case, I see no impact. If it's a location where the road is settled over time and we've got water concentrating in the center of the roadway, we'd have to be careful in shaping the speed hump so we're not trapping the water behind it. So it would take some putting my eye specifically on this location to make certain it's the right location. And then if it's a location, again, where we've got drainage because the road's degraded over time, running where it shouldn't, maybe trying to find another location for that hump.
Okay. And I know you're going to reach out to police and fire, but could you reach out to the ambulance company too?
Certainly.
If the fire department can answer that question? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there? Yes, sir.
Councilman Tomlin made a good point about being in that area. Mount Tom does not have a stop sign. So when you people coming out of Mount Tom, I can tell you how many times I back out of my driveway. I'm going to be going south. I'm looking up the hill. I'm seeing nobody. I back out, and all of a sudden, there's somebody right behind me because they came out of Mount Tom Avenue. There's no stop sign there. If we're talking about safety, suggest you look into that. That could make a big difference, okay? I can't tell you how many times. Oftentimes I'll say to her, I started down the street, there's nobody there. All of a sudden, somebody right behind me. And that would make a big difference. Hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Tomlin.
Yeah, I just want to state one more thing on the, and it's true, there's a lot of side streets up there that don't have stop signs. I'm sure all over the city, there's certain streets that don't have, I know the end of mine doesn't have a stop sign either, Joanne. I mean, it's just sort of common nature. I mean, they should just think to stop. You can't put up 100 stop signs in the city, but I mean, that's something we could definitely look at because of that traffic accident there. Bob, the question I have is, and I'm glad Councilman McGee brought it up, if within a year or two they're going to pave the street, that we could probably hold this off, right?
I would recommend that because we would effectively have to rebuild most of the speed hump. We are, just for the council's benefit, I mentioned it to, I can't remember which councilor I mentioned to, we're in the process of developing what's known as a pavement management plan citywide, and that process involves actually going out and photographing every 10 feet of roadway.
Wow.
And there's some real interesting technology out there right now that uses those photographs electronically to come up with a pavement rating index for every 10-foot section of a roadway. So in the next 3 to 4 months, we expect to be complete that process and to be able to come up with a more, what I'd look at, a more rational approach towards where we decide to spend our limited repaving money in the future.
Right.
It'll really allow us to take a look at where the worst roadways are, where we get the biggest bang for our buck. And if Bemis happens to be a roadway where that comes out towards the top of the list, then I would recommend that we hold off putting speed humps if it's a year or two away. If it's 10 years away, then I'd be less inclined.
Right, and the other thing is, just as you said, that if it's not going to happen for a number of years, that you would put them in, but speed humps just don't happen overnight, and they take money, they take money transfers, they take time. There's only a certain time of the year that you put them in, and then also, like you said, if it's going to be 5 years or 10 years, you're going to do Bemis, you want to get the speed humps in there. If this is approved, you would put it in within maybe a year or two, right? It's not going to happen like within a couple of months.
Most likely not, correct. Because
If they do put them in, it wouldn't be until the spring or summer probably of next year anyways.
That's a more reasonable time frame, yes.
And just so the neighbors know, it's trying to find the funding for them also.
Right.
For that. Okay, thank you.
Councilor McGivern, I just have a clarifying question for you. In your question to our engineer, is that information that will have to be taken in the public hearing, or were you speaking technically relative to the placement?
I think it was technical in general, not just for Bemis, but for any time we do speed
Okay,
humps.
I just wanted to clarify that
Yeah.
for the purposes of the public hearing. Thank you. Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, hi, Bob, thanks for being here. Did you say you were going to accumulate the crash data for Bemis?
I haven't done to date, but I can reach out to the police department and get that data.
Okay, so
just to have it for the record. Yes.
If you would. And then I had a question the other day. We passed an order here that I filed relative to procuring more temporary speed humps. Do you have an update on whether or not the city procured any more?
I believe we have a total of 4 temporary speed humps. Two that were, in fact, the ones that were installed in Bemis were new when they were installed. We had 2 speed humps in addition to those, 2 old speed humps.
Yay, Bemis.
So I believe we still have 4. We have now 4 at our
Oh, so we doubled. Wow, that's okay. That's okay. We're off to the races. I think the order requested a couple more, but that's the beginning. I want us to just point out. I think I heard a couple of councilors say that 5's a little too much and 2 doesn't sound enough. But somewhere there's a sweet spot in there. Maybe 3 sounds right, and I'd be supportive. I do know that my brother's former mother-in-law, 177 Bemis, she's since passed away in the last 30 days, but she vehemently opposed any speed humps there. So I just want to make that just for the record too. But I think it was just the noise factor and the cost factor too. I certainly would want to get, because Bemis is such a steep slope, even steeper than Vermont, where there are speed humps, and there are several in Ward 3, at least 2 streets off the top of my head. Maybe Joe could. I know there's South Elm and Lawler, and there might be a third one, but those are flat. So they seem to be pretty effective, and I think the residents there are fairly satisfied with them. But Bemis being so slopey, I think you'd want to certainly have some impact on cars that are traveling up the road, and you want to have some kind of analysis of what it does in the winter months in particular. That road is really steep, so I'd hate to have somebody be stuck because they're trying to anticipate the speed hump, and then they can't accelerate speed to get up to the top of the hill. So that would be, I think, something you can consider. And the last point is, I don't see why we can't have I heard what Councilor Tallman said. I mean, certainly we don't want to have, another constituency, I've said this since I came in here, signs are ignored other than directional signs. You know, this is how I get to 391, this is how I get to, wherever, you know, some kind of directional sign to navigate traffic through a city. As far as signs go, they're just habitually ignored. However, I think a stop line in a lot of these, you know, that's, again, I know there's a man and person power, and there's paint and all that, but that, I would think that would, you know, that might have some, you know, bear some fruit for a lot of these streets where residents don't want to have a lot of, you know, signage everywhere, stop signs. I know when we installed the sign in Sherwood, I got a little kickback on that, but I think it's again, it's borne some fruit that, you know, people were, you know, stopping their darn cars. But where a stop sign may be overkill, a stop line, I think would, you know, might have a positive effect. So I just wish the DPW would consider that as an alternative. Thank you.
Not. Can I speak again? Okay, 1 minute.
1 second.
All right.
Several months ago, I was driving up 91. They were doing construction. They had rubber strips laid across the road to slow the traffic. They were probably 2 inches wide. They laid maybe 3 of them side by side, and the traffic had to slow down to go over them. Now, this would be a summertime thing, a temporary thing that you would pick up. When winter came, you couldn't plow for it or whatever, but if a bunch of those were laid out in these positions where these speed humps might be, it might slow people down. I did ask about that before at probably my earlier meetings when I went down to DPW, but I don't know what they cost, but it was not a speed hump. It was a strip of rubber, 3 or 4 of them laid side by side, bump, 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 and you go on, okay? Just something to look into.
They'd have to be picked up. Thank you. Okay, not seeing anyone else, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We can accept the information that we've requested in the public hearing, outside of the public hearing. The accident statistics, et cetera.
Oh,
That's, you
okay.
know, that can happen.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then does the committee feel prepared to make a recommendation to the council at this point?
I think we ought to table it because I think what we heard is that there's going to be, I mean, it's up to you, Pete. I mean, but I think what we heard is that there's going to be a possibility for road resurfacing there. So I'd like to have the chair consider tabling this until
We get the information.
until we get a little more feedback from Department of Public Works, especially with the road resurfacing. So that and then what? May I ask one more question, Madam Chair? To the DPW superintendent?
If your seconder withholds his second.
Okay. Mr. Bob, we just so and I haven't checked, but we had other speed humps passed. Have they been installed?
Frost.
For example, George Frost Drive?
George Frost.
George Frost does not have speed humps, to the best of my knowledge right now, but we are scheduled to pave George Frost in this year's cycle, so I would imagine they'd be installed at that point.
Okay, so I just through the chair to Bob, so I just want to, you know, so the residents there know, this is, even if we pass this tonight, this is not going to be a, expect them installed. I don't think anybody is, but there's got to be some expectations. So George Frost, we passed that.
Oh, I think over a year ago.
Okay, we'll say between a year and 2 years ago, we had this very similar public hearing to this with the residents, and so they've yet to be installed. But the point I want to convey is that what we heard from the engineer is the road is going to be, that road has been needing to be resurfaced since my father was president at HCC, and that was 15 years ago when he retired. So now that that's going to be resurfaced, maybe there's a glimmer of hope that you can install the speed humps. So I think that'd be a nice bonus for Bemis. As Councilor McGivern pointed out, that road is, it's an important road in the city. It needs to be cared for, and it probably has to be resurfaced. It's a very important road. And then once it's resurfaced, then the 3 speed humps, that sounds like a decent compromise to get those. But, I mean, that's a pretty costly road to resurface. So I'm not sure when the Chapter 90 funds are going to be available for that. But, maybe in fiscal '21. And so hopefully we can see something happen then. Thank you.
Councilor Lisi.
I would offer to reconsider the motion that I made to close the public hearing then, because it seems that we do want to have some more discussion, and perhaps we want to hear more specifically what the number of speed humps are and where they're thought to be positioned, and allow the public to hear that before they're actually placed in the ground.
So I'll just make a motion to table.
Well,
We need to continue to a date certain.
if we're going to keep
Okay,
it
well,
open,
a
we have
motion
to
to continue-
rescind,
okay.
we have to
Well-
rescind our vote to close the public hearing.
Motion to reconsider.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we would have to continue to a date certain.
Okay. Pick the date.
So to Bob, in terms of getting the feedback,
I would say something like February, March of next year.
what do you think would be a reasonable timeframe to continue to?
Yeah, because
The trickiest part of this is really trying to figure out where Bemis sits into the longer-term paving plan, because I'm a big
so before the summer.
believer, I want to see that data first before I even try to make any guesses in terms of what the logical sequence of paving is. The other pieces, and I've written down, getting input from police and fire, that's fairly quick. Accident data is fairly quick. Taking a specific look at this is on the ground where the humps are going to be, that's something that can be done relatively quickly. So I would say if I can answer those questions in a month or two, where it fits into the paving plan is a longer question.
But do we need to know that to have an impact on where the humps would go?
No, it would strictly be, do we make a decision to implement now, or do we wait? And it really depends on where Bemis would sit in the cycle.
Okay.
I believe so.
Did you hear that, Dave? So we don't, so from what I understand, based on Bob's response, we don't necessarily need to know about where they're falling in the paving cycle in order to make some other determinations based on the data that we asked for, the traffic, the accidents, the positioning of the humps. It would just be, so we could basically have the public hearing, have some discussion about where the speed humps are anticipated, and then we would just be updated as to whether we're going to hold off, or whether and for how long we're going to hold off, depending on the paving cycle.
How about, can I suggest a date then?
Sure.
I was going to suggest November 12th, because that's a few months, that gives you ample time, and that's,
That's fine.
Does
That
that
sounds
work
good.
for
That
you?
would work definitely.
so a
Yes.
motion to continue the public hearing to the
It would have to be the second Tuesday.
second Tuesday
Which would
in
be-
November.
It is November 12th.
The 12th. Mm-hmm. You're right, the day after Veterans Day. So we need to take a vote to rescind the closing of the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We did that.
Aye. And now we are continuing the public hearing to 6:30 on November 12th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so this public hearing will reconvene Tuesday, November 12th at 6:30.
And we'll get all
Thank you all for
Sure.
coming down.
Chair Vagan, just a question. Would that be, everybody be notified on that, the public hearing?
No,
They
not a
won't,
second
so-
notification. The notification was for tonight.
Okay.
Tonight is the notification for the continuation, and it will be posted 48 hours, a minimum of 48 hours, on the website under the Ordinance Committee agenda. Okay?
So if they want to get the word out to the neighborhood, they can do it on their own? to
They
get
can
their-
tell people right
People.
now. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
That'd be good.
Thank you all. So I'll accept a motion on item 3.
Motion to take 3 off the table. Is this a public hearing?
Yep.
Okay, motion to take 3 off the table, open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
that's
All in
Second.
favor? Aye. Agenda item 3 is a special permit application from Canna Provisions to operate a registered marijuana dispensary at 380 Dwight Street, map 21, block 01, parcel 003. This is a continuation, and so,
No, it's a new.
oh, that's right, it's the revision. It's the revision. The new space in the same address.
It is. It's a new
Correct,
special
but
permit
it's in the
application.
same address, but new space.
Exactly. Well, if I can clarify that, first of all, my name is Eric Williams. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Canna Provisions Inc. We previously came before this committee and the council as well, and were granted a special permit for 380R Dwight Street, and I'll point out where that is here. That is this building. This small portion. What we intend to do, or what we're asking the committee, is to grant a special permit to move this location right here. So there's already, it's all within the same block. Previously, it was the same address. The reason I think it's important to say why we are actually asking for this change, and the main reason, frankly, was over the course of continuing with our operations, our architecture, meeting our neighbors. Clearly, there's a strong sentiment with all of our neighbors in that community, that neighborhood right there, to work together. I'm really excited to know all of our neighbors, and in that thank you so much. And in that, we found, we got to know our neighbors really well and found that there was a better solution to address two of the main concerns that were addressed previously, although we still were granted a special permit, and that was dealing with additional parking. And that was also our neighbors' concerns about what else they could do, other programming within this space as well. Further, it's a much larger space that we're able to occupy next door, and we believe much more secure as well. The special permit application, again, from what was granted previously, the only real changes apart from the actual address, I mean, I went through and it was basically changing 380R to 380 across the way, except for our security plan, which was significantly beefed up, again, through just more experience and adding more personnel on our team. That security plan was submitted to the Holyoke Police Department, and you do have a letter stating that it was approved by the Chief of Police.
And can you just tell us the date on that letter? I tried to look through the applications to see if it was attached.
No, I have it right.
The revised documents submitted.
Oh, that we have tonight in front of us?
Yes,
Okay.
it is dated June 3rd.
Okay,
Provided previously, but this is.
okay, because I didn't see it in the jacket, so
Yes,
thank
it's
you.
dated June 3rd.
But we have it tonight in this.
Yes, you do, ma'am. You do.
Thank you.
So this is the site that we are looking to move into. It's on the ground floor. We still own this property here, or have control of this property, so we'll be actually using parking from the previous special
through the
permit
original
application,
lease.
through the original lease, as well as through our new lease, we'll be able to add more parking as well. And again, it's a much larger space. We've gone through full design plans at this point. We're ready with full construction documents, ready to submit for building permits as well. We just think it's a much more functional, much more beautiful. We do hope to be the first store to open, and we think it will be something that the city can be much more proud of, not just of that location, but frankly, I'm super excited. I think it'll be the best looking dispensary that this country has seen yet. I don't know if you've had a chance or been in that space, but it's truly dramatic. So with that, would you like us to go through other pieces of this? Or?
I think what I would just like to understand, and I would like you to just run through it, but I just want to check in with the public behind you to see if there are people here for this public hearing relative to the special permit for Canna. I see Mr. Marrero with us, and so you could give us if there's any open issues for you on the Canna. If that's all right, I just sort of like to know what's in front of us, so then if there's anything remaining as you're going through your presentation, maybe they would be answered.
Sure.
Thank you, Marcos.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for having me. No major open issues as was explained. Because of our business planning, it was just a strategic move 20 feet over. So the site has many things that are similar. We tend to write questions to kind of prompt questions from the review authority, just in case, so that they're clear, that they're on the record. So some of the things that we were trying to prompt was just trying to explain how the traffic circulation pattern would happen on the site now. That had been a question that was amply discussed the first time around. So now that they have access to, I'm going to say access to more of the parking space, how that would work. We're suggesting maybe buffering with some landscaping where they're going to have the dumpster, because it's facing Dwight Street, so just an aesthetic thing. And trying to understand whether the refuse was going to be tipped by hand or moved by hand, or if it was just going to be with a vehicle. Those were, and just in general, better understanding the parking arrangement. They have a certain amount of parking spaces that are reserved, and they seemingly have more parking this time, but it wasn't clear to staff on what basis. So just trying to clarify those things a little bit.
Okay, so now you know.
Right, and with me is Matthew O'Boyle. He's the lead architect with Phase Zero Design, and he can speak specifically to the traffic, or to the parking.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as Eric mentioned previously, we will be utilizing parking that we had originally designated for the previous special permit application. That was not included on here because it may be subject to change. We didn't want to rely on that parking. We do have 10 spots leased with the building owner at this location for permanent Canna Provisions customers only.
So is that in addition to the original?
Yes.
And so now we have a total of?
22. There is another option for 12 additional spaces by the owner of this building to be optioned by Canna Provisions if necessary. This is specifically, the goal is to use it while the opening rush occurs, and if future tenants come into the space, Canna Provisions will work with the owner on those spaces on a month-to-month basis. The other aspect of this is the employees will be parked off-site, either at the parking garage or at other public parking spaces, and brought in. There will also be encouragement for local employees to use bicycles, public transportation, or walk. Canna Provisions, and Eric can speak more to that in the future.
Sure. And I can address that right now. And also the screening, as you said, Mr. Marrero, we intend, and that's addressed in these responses, we do intend to screen over there. We're going to be investing a lot of money out there. We absolutely want to make sure that that looks great out there. And specifically, we know we've had a dispensary already in operation in Lee, Massachusetts. We've been open 32 days now. So we've gotten a lot more experience out there, including knowing exactly how much refuse we have based on deliveries coming through. And we would be storing the main refuse that we actually have, unfortunately, is cardboard that needs to be recycled. So we would be storing that as well inside so it doesn't get in our Sally Port, so that doesn't get wet and become more of an issue, because they do charge by weight. Further, I do want to point out that we already have 3 employees who are currently underemployed and working in our Lee facility that will be part of the management team here. All 3 of them are within walking distance. We will encourage and plan on hiring as close to our facility as we possibly can. We are actually even buying bicycles for several of our employees right now out in our Lee location. It's part of our company ethos more than anything to really just try to have as little of an environmental impact on the environment. And further to that, we intend to apply for, there's a rating that comes with the CCC in terms of your environmental impact. That program's not up and running yet, but we've been working on the bones of that and fully intend to utilize transportation, public transportation, walking, biking, encouraging all of those. I can also further to the previous conversations that we've had, and I know that when we were speaking last time, there's since been a lot of dispensaries that have been open. We've certainly heard about traffic concerns. We've also heard about parking concerns as well as lines outside dispensaries. I can tell you that right now, we've operated dispensaries for a long time. We've seen significant rushes. And before we were telling folks, we know how to do this. We know how to do a specific pattern through getting persons in, bifurcating the sales force, having fulfillment as opposed and prepackaged materials. Right now, I can tell you that our facility we just had on Saturday had over 500 sales and over 1,000 persons going through our dispensary. And that was with 26 parking spaces and no lines whatsoever. We have been doing this the right way. We know that we can get those persons through a lot faster. We'd love it if we had those numbers, but we can actually handle a lot more through this type of dispensary as well.
And so for the people who are driving in, how is that path seen?
So currently existing on Dwight Street are 2 curb cuts to enter the site. This one at the north side is provided to the owner of this building via easement. This curb cut here and traffic access is by right. There's no easement here. The intent is to work with the other landowners on this block to provide some kind of protection to prevent traffic for the dispensary and other uses in this building from going to their parking lot.
How?
Well,
a fence.
They want a fence. We're working with them to figure out exactly what that will be, and we'll submit that at a future date. There will be pedestrian crosswalks here that are kind of faint on this plan, but they will connect to the sidewalk to the front of the building, so anyone walking along the sidewalk will be protected by that. We're also working with a civil engineer to locate bollards for pedestrian protection from vehicles.
Councilor Bartley?
Thanks, gentlemen, for being here. What's the address in Lee?
It's 220 Housatonic Street.
Is that Route 20?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
We'd love to have you stop by.
I will on my way to Saratoga. So yeah, I will be stopping by. I assure you. And Councilor Lisi, you're a New Yorker, but you're Long Island, so you don't know Stewart's, do you? No, that's a chain up there. Yeah, that's where I stop for my milkshake. Okay. And it's in New York. It's a New York chain, not a Mass chain. And just remind me, Mr. Williams, you said you have 3 employees?
Yes, we currently have 3 employees that are Holyoke residents that were hired specifically to be trained in our current dispensary to take on management positions.
Okay, and then, all right, I mean, I don't really...
Our intent right now, we expect initially that we are going to need 48 employees to run this store.
Okay, how many employees do you have running the Lee store now?
Right now we have 43 there, but there's also some executives and some management folks who are not store specific. We should be granted the special permit to be able to move here. We would also, that serves another purpose of moving across the parking lot, and that is we would really like to be able to locate our corporate headquarters here.
Okay, and I just can't, for some reason, because we went through this once before, I'm just trying to grasp where you are on Dwight Street. It's just...
It's the Worgen
Oh,
area?
thank
Yes,
you. Yeah, I know exactly where it is. Yep, okay, then there, say no more. I know exactly where it is. Okay, so that's, right, okay, so that's coming up, a nicer area, we'll stabilize and all that. And can you cut through, can you cut through to the next street? Is that not?
You're asking a very, very loaded question. So you're not supposed to. There are two cars in particular, one person from one household that we know that does cut through, and we would like to stop that. It's not actually, it cuts through
Right.
through down here.
Right, so, and is the next one Appleton, Marcos? I'm blanking my streets.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
From Dwight, well, I guess they're going south,
The next street south would be Appleton.
is Appleton.
Yep.
Okay, so is it an alleyway, Mr. Williams? Is that-
Yes, it goes through, like there's a cut through right over here.
Okay,
There's an opening. There's not a public alleyway like in other
Correct.
blocks in the city.
right, that's, yeah, I get
There's
it.
not a public road to go through there.
No, I didn't think so. Okay, so what's the planning board's recommendation on that, or do they have one?
They have none. They don't. The board per se doesn't have a role in review of cannabis permits.
But do you-
The board itself doesn't
the
have a
staff,
review.
Do you have a recommendation?
In terms of the cut through, no, we issued none.
Speed humps.
Okay, well, I guess that's gonna have to be somehow addressed. You're gonna have to figure that out, or.
It's,
so-
yeah, once we finish our construction there, I mean, we're going to be resurfacing as well. We intend to solve that.
But that's a private
It's
alleyway.
a private issue.
Private alleyway, right?
Exactly.
So it's not one of our typical public alleyways that okay, so this is.
No, sir.
It's, yeah.
It's private property.
It's a private person cutting through private property, and we'll address that privately.
The alleyway existing, the lot lines are directly in the middle of the alleyway, and there's easement access rights on both sides, so it's a little more complicated. But we are, Canna Provisions is working with the owner of both buildings to address these concerns.
Okay. And just one last, how far of a walk is it from your building to the parking garage? Is it?
It's yeah, probably even less than that. I'd say it's probably 3 minutes max. I mean, you can see it from right at the parking garage.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. So I heard that you're going to be storing your cardboard refuse indoors because of the weight issue. But the dumpster, from what I understand, is still going to be on Dwight Street at this point in time. Can it be?
Yeah, we can show right where it is.
Dumpster. You want to point to it?
Yes.
It's right.
It's right over here. And so we'd put in both screening as well as vegetation, and we have the room to do that. And we'd most likely end up having some climbing, flowering. Actually, I was looking at moonflowers in particular because of the way that they grow so fast, given the sunlight that comes there. We've actually had a horticulturalist come out and identify those for us as to what we can do. So.
Yeah, I do. I think as we're seeing a lot more development coming through the city, I think it's starting to highlight areas that we're seeing only after the fact that the development is happening as having an aesthetic impact. And I think the dumpster is definitely going to, I think I'm going to ask that it be part of the conditions of the permit, that it is screened.
If you asked it or not, we'd do it, but absolutely, for sure. We are investing a lot into this, and it's certainly something that the curb appeal is really important to us there.
The screening is an open question from the planning department. We are investigating where we can install or provide vegetative screening on the street near the curb cut, just to maintain visibility for exiting the parking area. And we'll maximize the screening to code.
So it's 2 layers of screening then. There'd be vegetation on the curb side and then some sort of screening with the moonflowers around the, creating an encasement for the dumpster.
Well, the dumpster itself will be enclosed by a vinyl fence that's tall enough to screen the entirety of the dumpster. And then there will be additional plantings nearby, and then there will be more vegetation within the 5-foot landscape buffer off of Dwight Street.
Okay.
And the entire enclosure, again, from our experience that we already have, would be no larger than the table you're sitting at right now.
Okay.
I would also like to add that a big part of our special permit to begin with was also our commitments to supporting the city outside of the host community agreement, which is still in effect for us. We've since added and bolstered a lot more. In fact, we've already received a provisional license from the CCC at 380R, as well as an application is accepted as soon as we're good with the city council to move our location there. We've made significant donation commitments to 3 different charities that are right here in Holyoke, and certainly more to come.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything? Counselor Bartley has had to depart temporarily. He will return. Any other questions, concerns?
And no
Are there
members
members of the public here who wish to speak in favor or in opposition to this special permit for Canna? I don't see anybody. Is there anybody there? Okay, not seeing anyone.
Motion then that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion that we adopt or grant the special permit.
With some conditions that, would you like to list?
Same conditions.
I think in,
We had are you thinking the same conditions that we had on the original special permit?
the typical 5, right? And additionally, I do want to condition the dumpster enclosure and plantings.
Yeah, hang on a second. I just want to make sure I get it on the sheet.
There's
Okay.
Dumpster enclosure and vegetative screening, I think, is the easiest way to put it down.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Oh, yes.
Canna Provisions was probably one of the first that was approved before one of the standard conditions became reviewing the traffic for opening day. So not that I'm trying to make it harder for the applicant, but
No,
the
but
city
thank you. I've
wanna
sort of
have-
lost track in the alphabet soup of.
Yeah, we sort of take it for granted now, but there was a point in time where we just added on as a condition that to be able to manage the opening day, opening month, whatever that surge period is.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's closed. May I speak still?
You can, because we're in the point now
Okay,
of
great.
determining what the conditions will be.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. We have also had to do that when we opened our Lee operation. It's a much more heavily traveled road. We took what we felt were extreme circumstances under consideration, including having traffic officers outside directing traffic. We also directed persons to other overflow lots. In the end, they were not necessary, and working with the town of Lee, it was only 1 week after we were open that they requested to pull any other traffic officers. We asked them to let's just keep it for 1 more weekend so we could get another data point. We did that, and we no longer have any, and we were able to get rid of 2 other overflow lots.
You were able to then subsequently manage it with staff.
Absolutely, ma'am. And we certainly will be able to, look, we understand this is still going to be the first one in town, and we would certainly want to err on the side of caution.
Okay, so then if we added the 5 standard conditions that we have been, and are you familiar with those?
I'm very familiar.
Okay, there's enough videos on this by now, right? Okay, so the 5 standard provisions, and then the 6th one, which will be the dumpster enclosure screening with vegetation. And then the 7th one will be the provision of staffing and police presence as needed to safely manage
A traffic mitigation.
traffic.
I'd like to just, I'd suggest the police, but generally we work with the police department to come up with a traffic mitigation plan. So
Okay,
if they,
so-
I'd ask that if that was their recommendation, we certainly would. But
So as a condition that you will develop a traffic mitigation plan with the police department
yes.
for opening day and
Until they
until
deem
it's-
it's not
until,
Ma-
It's my understanding that the City Ordinance Committee is in receipt of the letter dated June 2nd, 2019 by Robert Parent, City Engineer. The response letter that we provided you today states that we will comply with the 3 items outstanding in his letter,
Okay,
for the record.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, that letter provides the language that's been used before in other special permits, where the city has provided Bob Parent with the oversight responsibilities for the traffic mitigation plan. So I would suggest that the language, which, as he just said, they responded affirmatively to, just remain equal across the board.
Instead of the police, it's Bob, the
So,
engineer.
so as number 7, I'm just going to note, we'll develop a traffic mitigation plan with the PD with oversight from our city engineer.
Right.
Or
well, yeah,
with our city engineer.
And you could refer to
rather
directly to the
than the
language
PD.
that's in Robert Parent's letter, which is
Hang on, let me dig.
which is what the council has used before.
At the end of the package that we provided you today.
Okay.
It's the last page.
Oh, that's easy.
Oh, sorry,
second to
second to last.
Second to last, there's nothing hardly last.
I just like to get the language as buttoned up in the meeting as we can, so we save Crystal a headache, hopefully, down the
Yeah.
road. Okay, so what we've done in the past is say, item 7, as per correspondence dated June 2nd,
Yeah.
from our city engineer, Robert Parent. Okay? Okay. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay, then a motion would be in order relative to the special permit with the conditions,
Motion that we grant the special permit with the conditions.
Second, oops,
No, it's fine.
as noted
As
and
noted.
reviewed? Yeah.
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so this will be recommended to, oh, hang on, we have to back up one step, do we? No, we closed the public hearing, we read it, okay, we're good. Just to make sure I covered all the
Bases.
bases, dotted the i's and crossed the t's.
Thank you very
So
much.
this will go to the city council meeting tomorrow night. It's on the agenda provisionally, waiting our disposition.
If I may, I don't have, there's no chance to speak. It's just that
The only time that it would come up would be if there was a concern or a question about the application. And we suspended rules to give the applicant an opportunity to answer a question, but I'm not seeing
We don't
concerns.
anticipate-
Usually,
Yeah.
if we had concerns of that sort, they would have been evident from the public, evident at the hearing, and from committee members.
I'll
or
make sure someone is here.
Community
regardless.
members. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I know, I'm getting out of summer vacation mode. I'm still on vacation in my mind. Okay. All right, so we're on to, oh, now, hang on a second. Are folks here from High End Management Company yet? They not here yet? We can wait, we can wait, we can defer.
Can we ask the members in the audience if they're here for anything in particular?
Sure. Are there members in the audience here on a particular agenda item?
110 Winter
Their
Street.
flight was delayed, but they are en route, and they are expected before the end of our meeting.
Tanya was here.
I'm sorry?
Tanya was
I
here
did
just a
see
moment
her,
ago.
because I was thinking we could go to her next, but, and you're waiting on.
Here for fencing.
on- Oh, right, we can go to that.
Yeah, let's do
No,
that.
I'm sorry, for the fences, not fencing.
No. I was
I'm not
with
here
you.
to shank anyone.
I was with you. So I'll entertain a motion on item 5.
So moved? Or, sorry.
That,
So-
no, this-
Open the public hearing.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item 5, filed by Counselor McGee. Order that section 4.6.2.1 corner lot be amended to allow corner lots to erect and maintain a fence when such fence will have no impact on traffic, visibility, etc. 4.6.21 corner lot, no fence shall be erected or maintained within the front or side yard setback of a corner lot as defined in Table 5.2 of the zoning ordinance in a manner which interferes with traffic visibility across the corner. Now, I do know that we have received a recommendation from the planning board relative to this order. And I have read it. It seemed pretty technical, and personally, it sounded to me like a good thing for the planning board to
Sure.
do. But I do want to find a copy of the letter to read into the record unless you happen to have it with you.
I have one with notes if you don't mind reading my gibberish on the side.
Not at all, if you don't
Or I
mind.
can read it as well. You would
Try to print these out ahead of time,
Sure.
but I don't always. Well, it's short.
There are 3 text additions and 1 deletion that is being suggested to the ordinance.
Right, so do you mind just
I don't mind reading
it into the record, and then we'll just
No.
have it as part of the public hearing?
Not at all. And I can walk you through the explanation as well, or however you want. So I'll read into the record the 3 changes, right, and we'll go from there?
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. So the first proposed change is to section 4.6.2.1, which reads, "No fence shall be erected or maintained within the front or side yard setback of a corner lot as defined in Table 5.2 of the Zoning Ordinance in a manner which interferes with traffic visibility across the corner." That's deleted. That's the proposal.
Okay.
What is suggested to be proposed in its stead, this is the most technical part of the aggregation, but I'll read it into the record and then we'll discuss it.
Okay.
The addition would be as follows. A fence or other barrier, including a barrier of living plant materials such as a hedgerow, may be erected on a corner lot following the rules for corner lots established in Section 5.0 Dimensional Controls, provided that no structure or vegetation shall be over 3.5 feet in height within the site triangle, in quotation marks. The site triangle is defined as the area within a triangle formed by 2 lines measured along the center of the nearest lane of the public right-of-way of intersecting streets from the point of intersection for a distance of 25 feet, and a 3rd line connecting the terminal points on the 2 legs measured along the lanes of travel.
Sounds like a math project for
And
an
the-
engineer to me.
And there is a convenient diagram for those who cannot follow that, which is probably no one. The diagram is as or more helpful than the language. The 3rd change, right? There's a deletion. There's an addition. We're suggesting as a potential substitute for under 4.6.3.2. We're suggesting modifying the 3rd bullet point. It currently reads, "The fence shall not impair sight distance of vehicular, pedestrian, or other traffic." We're suggesting as a potential modification to that, the proposed fence makes use of materials or construction that limit opacity and allow for vehicular and pedestrian visibility. The last addition is
That limits opacity?
limit opacity, yes. These are, so the bullet points, limiting opacity is not,
Less see-through. Is that really what you want?
opacity would make it more opaque, right? So
So
it's limiting
harder
how
to see.
opaque it is.
So it can't be opaque.
It's not saying that it can't. So I
Well,
have to give
it-
context for the bullet point, right? So the context of these bullet points are a special permit may be granted by the planning board to exceed the height of a fence in the following instances where the board finds that. And so the bullet points are things that make it favorable to grant a height increase by special permit. It's not that it has to be opaque or not, but that it's a criteria. These bullet points are criteria that the permit granting authority can take into consideration.
So that if it was made of a material that allowed for the visibility versus
Right.
something that would block it,
Right, it is.
then it
is
might be able to be considered?
Correct. A favorable,
how I-
a favorable condition is if you can see through it, it's less of a problem.
Yeah.
In some instances, you could have a complete vinyl fence and it isn't a problem at all. But if for some reason it was a problem that the permit granting authority wanted to provide visibility, the fact that you would provide materials that are less opaque, then
Like,
that would be
they could use a
favorable.
wire fence or
Uh,
some other material.
Yeah,
that
slats
you
of wood, slats of
see
metal,
through
stuff like
with
that.
space.
Okay, okay.
Then the last addition is to that section. So basically, section 4632, besides listing out the criteria for the special permit, currently it lists four occasions where someone could have an increase in fence height beyond what's allowed for standard heights. And so this is adding a section E under that section, which says front yard. In the case of residential areas in any zone, fence height in a front yard may be increased to a maximum of 6 feet by special permit of the planning board, provided that the proposed fencing meets the criteria established above in the same section 4632, and that no fence or other barrier over 3.5 feet is erected in the site triangle established in section 4621 for corner lots. So those are the additions. Let me explain them how they work together.
In plain English.
In plain English. Right now, what our zoning ordinance does, what the law in Holyoke is if you have if you're on a corner lot, you cannot place any fence anywhere where you have setbacks from your property line. That is,
Because you technically don't have a front and a back?
well, because you have two fronts.
Okay.
So you can't put them anywhere within the setback. So if your zoning says you have a setback of 15 feet, you can't put a fence on your property line. That isn't only quite restrictive, it's probably creating 90% of fences on corner lots are not in compliance. So I don't know how that got in there, but it's obviously been there for a while. What this proposal says is, yes, people can have fences in the setbacks by right. It identifies an area, a triangle that's reasonably expected to be where a vehicular traveler or pedestrian would have to see around the corner. And in that corner, you couldn't have something that's higher than 3.5 feet. Why 3.5 feet? It's more or less where you'd expect someone sitting on a sedan where their eyesight would be from ground level. We've compared with other municipalities, and remarkably, this is a quite consistent feature of corner lots. The letter from the planning board, you'll see that we have stuff from Northampton, East Hampton, Westfield, Springfield, West Springfield, and Chicopee. Some of them limit it to 2.5 feet. One of them, Northampton, limited to 3 feet. We took the highest limit because it was closer to the 4 feet that usually we have on front lawns. So what it allows is anywhere outside of the triangle, you could go to the zone that you're allowed for a fence, right? Usually it's 4 feet. If you want to go above 4 feet, which has been some of the concerns that were presented and gave rise to this order, then it opens up a mechanism to do that, which is the standard special permit that anyone else would have to go through to increase fence height. But it protects that corner, which is what we were worried about. Well, how do we create a mechanism without affecting visibility at the corner?
Exactly.
And luckily, all of our neighbors had a straightforward answer, even though it is somewhat technical. I will say one last thing in terms of the corner, because it is referencing 25 feet. It is, the lines as drawn is 25 feet from the center lane of traffic.
Oh.
Ultimately, as you know, from the center lane of traffic, you add to that whether you have parking in the street or a shoulder, plus the width of the sidewalk. By the time you actually start measuring from the person's property line, that may be just 7 feet in from the corner. So it really isn't that dramatically impactful from where they can't go above 3.5 feet.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation, because I did read it, but the triangle part was
Sure.
Greek. Counselor Anderson Burgos?
In regards to corner lots, I know we're talking about fences, but does this include bushes? Because you know how there are bushes that will create that wall.
Right.
Does that include that?
For that site corner, it does include the bushes.
It does?
Because you could put anything, a bush, a wall, anything. You could put a statue, a sculpture, right? Anything that impedes the visibility. It's saying anything above 3.5, you wouldn't be allowed to put at the corner.
Okay, that's what
within that site triangle.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. I have a quick question. Do our ordinances currently allow fences on front lawns for other properties that are not corner properties?
Yes, they do.
They do. So this is coming in full harmony with what other properties would be able to do.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine.
And I think over the years, it seems like a number of fences have gone up, and I'm not sure under
Absolutely.
what, but I think we're actually getting with the practical reality, right?
Yes.
With this change?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking to make sure there's nobody from the public that wishes to speak for or against the change in the fence ordinance. Not seeing any.
Motion to close the public hearing?
You want to second that one?
Second, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And is there a motion on the amendment?
Motion that the recommendation from the planning board be adopted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for coming down and explaining that. But I think it will be helpful, and then people will have a path, and people will be in compliance. We probably grandfathered in a lot of people tonight.
Yeah.
Hopefully. All right. Thank you. Are the folks from high-end management here? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to take that up and open the public hearing.
Motion to take up item number 4 and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Welcome. So item 4 tonight is a special permit application from the High End Management Company to operate a registered marijuana retail establishment and recreational marijuana cultivation facility at 110 Winter Street, Holyoke, Mass. Map 031-032, Block 01, Parcel 004 and 009. Welcome. We understand you were travel challenged, but you made it.
Sincerely apologize. Appreciate your patience. We just wanted to be personally present and represent ourselves. So.
Sure, and we're flexible, and we do have some members of the public who are interested. You can press the button. If the green light goes on, your mic is on. There you go. We are item 4. Oh, just starting, but we did item 5. Okay, welcome. So all I ask is, as you're making your presentation, you just let us know who you are so I can take notes. And I did get an update today out of your department, so we'll ask you to run through that, all right?
Yes.
So you have the floor.
My name is Matt O'Boyle from Phase Zero Design, project manager. I'm here with Chris and Helen Andrews of the High End to present our special permit application for our marijuana manufacturing establishment in Holyoke. Part of the revision package that was submitted last Friday, we worked with the planning department to remove the retail portion, both the cafe and the dispensary.
So that's an official amendment that
Correct. They were no longer part of the special permit application. They will be moved to a different site, and a second separate special permit will be applied for.
Okay, so before us is only the cultivation.
Correct. Well, manufacturing as well. So there will be
And then
cultivation, processing, and kitchen for edibles.
All right.
Okay. So in accordance with the Office of Planning We have revised our proposed site plan, as you can see in the attached documents that I believe you should be in receipt of.
Everybody should have this. Hang on.
There's an extra one here.
Under here, I think I have one. Thanks.
So in the 11 by 17s, the third drawing is the one that I'll be referencing first. It's the proposed site plan, C4.
Oh, see a big one?
Mr. Boyle, where are you?
Say again?
Could you just repeat?
C4, the third 11 by 17 sheet. I believe they're folded towards the middle of that package.
Me too. I'll look at yours.
Do we all have that sheet ready? It looks like this.
The whole packet.
C-4. I believe it's the third sheet.
Yeah. I got it.
And then it's this third page.
I think you
yes,
just
got
went
it. Okay,
past
thank
it,
you.
that's all.
Okay, copy.
Yeah, it's stuck together. Okay.
Okay,
We're with
thank you. All right. So the project consists of the rehabilitation of approximately 60,000 square foot building located at 110 Winter Street, as shown on the plan here, under Parcel 1, number 110. The project also consists of the reuse of the existing parking lot at Parcel 4 across the street at Winter Street. The proposed project will provide 20 parking spaces at this parking lot with improvements to the existing curb. Currently, the parking lot kind of just flows into the street. We propose that we will continue the existing sidewalk on Winter Street through the parking lot to the corner of the passageway. That's a private road that connects Winter Street to the owner across the street from the project. The accessible route from that parking will be continuous along the new sidewalk across that passageway as denoted by the hatched pedestrian walking area to the sidewalk that's currently existing. What's not shown here and will be provided is an ADA curb cut ramp where that pedestrian walkway meets the existing sidewalk. And then it will continue to the building provided by an ADA ramp. Primary
At the slashed?
Yeah, the slashed
area?
is the pedestrian walking area. The existing building is 4 stories. We will be rehabilitating the building. It used to be owned and operated by Eureka Books. It's currently owned by the High End. They will continue ownership of the building during renovations and occupy the building after renovations have been completed.
That's for Parcel 1?
Yes.
Sorry, Parcel 1.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that was 60,000 square feet?
Just under. It's about
Around.
58,000 now.
Just on that point, Mr. Boyle, the sidewalk is ADA compliant now, or you're?
I do not believe that it is. It may have been when it was new, but it has fallen into disrepair and is no longer ADA compliant, but it will be made ADA compliant and be compliant as an accessible route from the building all the way to the parking.
Okay, who's doing that?
High End will be performing all that work.
And Mr. Parent, they have the Board of Public Works approval to build out public sidewalks?
Oh, sure.
I would.
Sure.
I did provide a comment letter that went out yesterday, given that we received the revised package on Friday. It didn't allow much time.
We have a long letter that we received today.
Correct. And there's a 2-page letter that I wrote yesterday that went out that dealt with a couple of these items.
And it's probably with,
No, it's
it's a separate
different.
one?
Yep.
Okay, if you will run through it.
Oh, do I have the letter?
It went to Councilor Vacan as well as to the council clerk. So
What
I don't know where it went from there.
I printed out a letter dated August 5th for High End. I think that was from.
Yeah.
From Curtis.
Yes, what you got from Curtis today
Curtis.
was, because you got one on Thursday, which is what we had at the time. Then there was an updated submittal,
Right, so
which
I
was
have-
quite substantive on Friday. So since
Right.
Friday, we, this
Right.
morning we evaluated and you
So I
got the
have
update.
the updated one from you that I have not read.
So-
And I'm sure we have,
Yeah, 1:49 yesterday, Sunday afternoon, there was a letter that went out to the applicant as well as to Councilor Vake and Ryan Allen and to Brenna McGee.
Okay, and just to the chair, if I may, I don't want to get bogged down. So your letter addressed this?
Certainly, I can either let the applicant continue speaking, or I can jump into the sidewalk discussion.
Yeah, Chris Andrews from the High End. We have been working with the town and Matt and the city solicitor's office because we have found out that the sidewalk is obviously city property. So for us to build an ADA ramp, we have to get permission from the city. So our council is engaged with the city solicitor's office to work that out. I'll let Matt, we also have an issue with the fencing around the loading dock at the end of the street.
So, for clarification, are you referring to the sidewalk at the parking or the sidewalk at the front of the building?
I think the parking is where because I see the hatch marks on the parking, but if there's other issues where...
Correct. So in regards to what Chris was referencing, we'll get into that in a few minutes, but for this sidewalk, it is my understanding that this sidewalk is currently proposed within the entire lot line of Parcel 4. I am not sure if there is an easement by the city within the buffer zone for sidewalk by the city, but we will certainly work with the city as required to provide that sidewalk.
Well, that's interesting.
If I can respond to that, I believe the area that's shown is, there are two cross-hatched areas on the plan. There's one that runs parallel to the street, and there's one that runs perpendicular to the street.
Right.
The one that runs parallel to the street is located within the city right-of-way, in front of lot number 4. It's not on lot number 4. And one of my comments dealt with that. The applicant is proposing to put a concrete sidewalk in the front of the parking area, which is a good improvement. It helps to close in the parking area. It helps to create a reduced curb cut. What I've suggested, and I put in front of the council in my comment letter, was in lieu of constructing that concrete sidewalk, which can be pricey. If you take a look at Winter Street, the entire sidewalks along the north side of Winter Street are currently asphalt sidewalks. And what I've suggested is that instead of constructing the concrete sidewalk just in front of the parking lot area, that the applicant be asked to extend the asphalt sidewalk where you see that cross-hatching on the plan. Because currently it's really a gravel shoulder of the roadway right now. There's really not anything to cross-hatch on top of. And I would expect that the cost of a shorter concrete sidewalk and a longer asphalt sidewalk would likely be comparable. But it would also then create a much more accessible, much safer route for pedestrians to get from the applicant's parking lot to the front of the applicant's building. So that was one of the comments that I had was, again, not looking, recognizing there's a cost and trying to balance the cost, but also create a route that was usable as a safe pedestrian route along the side of the road.
I do have your letter.
Okay, good.
Right, that's helpful. Again, I don't want to get too bogged down and, this is really minutia and I get it, but it's a public way and I just wanted that to be recognized. And also I'd like to get the input of the Ward 1 counselor on this as well, because I think she gets, rightfully so. I mean, when these things are just happening without her kind of recognize it or walking there,
A point on the sidewalk, we do have applicants for all types of projects across the city either construct sidewalks or make improvements to existing sidewalks within the public right-of-way. So it's not anything that's unique to this project.
Okay, so I'm satisfied for now until we...
Okay. Council Lisi?
Thank you. So the passageway, is this a covered passageway or?
No, it's just a roadway that's privately owned, is our understanding.
And is it going to be made to complete or extend the pedestrian walkway, the sidewalk? Or, I mean,
The intent is to stripe across the passageway and then continue the sidewalk until it turns down towards the building.
so the passageway is just a road?
Yes,
Okay, private road and the sidewalk cuts across it?
correct.
Okay, thanks.
Private road?
I believe it is private, yeah. It's labeled as a passageway according to our land surveyor. So I do not believe that that road is publicly owned.
I believe that's an alley location that wraps around the back of the parcels and runs back out to Appleton.
It's an entrance to Ederon. It's a back entrance to Ederon's facility.
Okay.
Do you want to continue
Sure.
going through it?
While we're discussing the site concerns, the item that Chris referenced earlier is that our ramp, as shown on Plan C-4, currently is proposed on the city sidewalk within the city's right-of-way. The adjacent landowner, ALJM LLC, lot number 108, I believe back in the 80s, received a discontinuance of the easement for their sidewalk and assumed control of that area to extend their building to the street. It is that same methodology that we are looking to follow. The applicant's council is currently working with Crystal Barnes, the city's council, to propose the legal request to receive that discontinuance so the applicant can legally construct the ramp by right. That same process will be followed for the proposed security Sallyport area. The police chief has requested a secure fenced-in area for deliveries that is only able to be accomplished by encroaching on the right-of-way of Winter Street. So a discontinuance of that area will also be requested. It's part of the same plan.
Okay. Tell me.
If you'd like me to, because partly I was the individual that put the concept of a discontinuance in front of the applicant, and so if you'd like, I can explain
Sure.
how we got to that. Doing some research in 1981, the city council approved the discontinuance of what effectively is the sidewalk on the south side of Winter Street from Appleton 290 feet down Winter Street. In 1985, the city council approved an additional discontinuance of 112 feet further down Winter Street, right to the edge of the property in question.
Okay.
There's currently 115 feet of Winter Street that has the full right-of-way width, the original full right-of-way width, right in front of this property, but the entirety of the rest of Winter Street has been reduced by the width of the sidewalk.
So it goes nowhere?
It
It serves no
If you think
functional
about it,
purpose?
it's a long rectangle. Most of the rectangle has been narrowed. The little end of the rectangle is still its original width. And what I suggested to the applicant was, instead of requesting approval to encroach within the right-of-way to build their handicap access ramp, which is a pretty long ramp given the grade change they had to make, that maybe continuing what the city council has approved twice already and extending that discontinuance all the way, the last 112 feet of the roadway, would make more sense.
Councilor Bartley?
So, and I guess I would generally defer to you, but the public can still use this? Is that, even though the public part is discontinued, what public, does the public have the right to use that area?
Typically what happens, and there's still some research by council on both sides, I believe that has to happen here, is when this section of the road would be discontinued, who do the rights revert to? Many times they revert to the adjoining property owners. If they revert to the adjoining property owners, then it becomes the adjoining property owner's right. It becomes part of their property. And that effectively is what happened with the property immediately adjacent to the applicant's property. Their building was extended right to the edge of what is now the right-of-way, but had formerly been the sidewalk, had been allocated for the sidewalk on the south side of Winter Street. So it effectively became part of the private parcel.
No, I heard that, so,
Yeah.
but can the public access that, legally access that sidewalk?
Again, the sidewalk was given up previously in the previous two discontinuances, so if the same process was followed here, the sidewalk would become the front walkway of this facility.
So the answer is no.
It would be privately owned, yes.
So the answer is no.
Correct.
Right, okay, that's, I'm just
So,
trying to drive at that. I find that a little bizarre. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to think of the worst case scenario with that, but, so, I mean, it's almost as if, why wouldn't the public have kind of almost easement rights to walk there? But now what the city council did twice before, and what you want to do again, is take away a public right to walk there. And what if the private owner wanted to put up some restrictive type of barriers or whatever else? Or what if they said to somebody who was using the sidewalk, get off my sidewalk and walk in the road? Well, I guess they could do that. That's kind of bizarre.
So,
If I may.
Well, we're just in a hypothetical world right here. So that's all. Let me just stay in hypothetical world for this.
Correct, and that's exactly what the neighbor did.
Yeah,
So they took that sidewalk and they got rid of it.
Yeah, ultimately, I want to get to the real world in a second, but I mean, that's what you're saying.
that
I
would
mean,
be the effect
I
of
would
this-
oppose
yeah.
that. Yeah, I would oppose that for anybody. I mean, if I was on the board at that point, I would never have, never agree to something like that. To take away a public walkway?
but may I just?
Oh, no, we're just in theory world. Yeah, we'll get back to the real. Give me a second.
I would suggest that what I'm suggesting right now is that the applicant be asked to build a new sidewalk on the other side of the roadway. So if the concern of the council was having a pathway along Winter Street, that pathway would be created, but on the other side of the roadway.
Okay, you didn't say that part. So I guess, to mitigate the effects, and I think that's probably what they were about to tell me, but that would be, I guess, something I could hear. But just to take away a sidewalk for a private owner, man, I can't believe that even happened, but obviously it did, and so there's that. Twice, yeah, that's pretty amazing. I wouldn't want that to happen on any street that I represented, but I wouldn't want it to happen anywhere but that's all. Sorry, Madam Chair, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, you have the floor.
Just, I don't know, maybe it's relevant, but the end of the street is a dead-end street. It runs onto the railway. And we would obviously be happy to do whatever the council would like to see to make the street accessible, but the street essentially ends at our building, and I absolutely understand, that every street should have access to the public. We want to basically, do the same. We want to rehab the building, make it presentable, make the street presentable, and do whatever and do whatever the city council. If it's a sidewalk, however far, or replacing it. But the street runs to the train tracks. And I know what was happening. We discussed it with Captain Moriarty, and we discussed it with the fire chief, that it was a problem because the kids from the school were using the street as a cut-through over the railway tracks, and that was, for the police, it was quite dangerous. But, that area will have to be, I guess, addressed, and that's what we're attempting to do with the city.
So, are you saying?
No, well, that's an important point that you're raising, Mr. Andrews. Yeah, that's vitally important. So, I mean, we're just talking 2 hours ago about public safety on a roadway, but now we're talking kids have access to crossing it, which is now an active rail bed. And what you're saying is that the police are noticing that the children are using that as a cut through.
As a cut through, yeah.
The railway has put
The railway there's a gateway at the end of the street that accesses onto the railway, and they've put a boulder in front of it. The railway have put a
Great
boulder.
job, yeah, great job by
Yeah.
whoever did that boulder. That's probably real effective.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we would like to work with the city, with Ederon, to fence that whole area in a presentable way. Yeah.
Because as you know, there are at least, there's 2 trains a day, public trains a day that go there.
Yes,
But that's gonna
absolutely.
increase to 6 trains a day.
Yes.
Well, it's supposed to happen in June, but of course, this is the Commonwealth we're talking about, so now we're looking at September, but we're probably looking at God knows when. But those, it's gonna be a much more active rail route. So that is a massive problem, potentially.
Well, we would be very happy to do whatever is needed. We've also a meeting with Ederon as well to fix that end of the street. It's overgrown, fences are all broken down. So whatever can be done.
And I appreciate your willingness to do that, but who's actually responsible for maintaining the fence and maintaining the security?
That's debatable.
Is it? It's not you, we know that, but you're willing to, because
Railway.
you're willing to step up. But this is incredible that this is allowed to exist right now, and with the potential of so many more trains. I mean, there's just somebody killed in Springfield not 3 months ago on a cut through, run over by a train. So this is not hypothetical stuff. This is an adult. So
we also, just to advise the council, we also have an issue with the back of our building, which is owned by Massachusetts Department of Transportation. So we're trying to arrange for that area to be fenced in and secured. It's overgrown. We have established that it's owned by the Massachusetts Department of Transport, and we'll be working hopefully with them to tidy and secure that area.
okay, well, so Mr. Parent, I think we need to get our arms around, this is not their problem to research this. They're willing to step up. It's not their problem to research it. It's our problem to research it. So whether it's your office or the law department to figure out who's responsible for securing this fence, that's critically important. Now, who ultimately repairs it? Well, we'll leave that open. I wouldn't want to dump that upon it's a generous offer. I wouldn't want to put that on a new applicant. I would want to have the responsible party step up and say that we're going to secure this, especially in light of what I just said about increased rail going through there. So I think that's pretty critical at this point, more so than little comments about sidewalks and who's going to fix little sidewalks, which is all great. I appreciate your willingness to do that, but fixing a cut through across an active rail bed, yeah, I think that's got to take priority over any of this. But so I'm glad we brought this to light anyhow. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So do you want to keep going
There's
through?
not too much more to express. I think it's pretty well covered if we have any
Pretty
more
well,
questions. Yep.
That's it. So this may be a dumb question, but I'm just having trouble visualizing it. So if you get the discontinuance and you create this access, is that simply creating access for the people who will be working there, or is it simply for an emergency exit? What's the functional purpose of that?
The functional purpose of the ramp is to provide a primary ADA accessible route to the building for employees.
For the employees to get in and out? So
Correct.
it's not just an emergency exit, it's just their main exit?
Correct.
Or is it the secondary?
It's the primary exit and entrance.
Okay, so there would need to be the sidewalk on the other side of the street as a practical matter?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And you're at the end of the street, and then there's the tracks, which seem to me to need to be secured by the railway. But certainly, we'd want to make it secure. Whoever is, I think you're probably between the rail, the city, and Mass DOT.
And if I could add one thing, one part of the application, and it's a little tricky to see on the map, if you look at the building has a funky little leg right at the end of it
Yeah.
that extends towards the right-of-way. That, as I understand it, is the proposed Sallyport receiving area for the project, and what the applicant is requesting is approval to put a fence around that leg of the building, which would come into the public right-of-way. So in effect, the fence that the applicant is requesting in some manner approval to install may actually help to solve this problem that we're talking here by helping to limit access to the rail property.
Well, we like win-win when we can
The
get it.
question that comes is, if the city was inclined to grant that approval, would the city grant it as an encroachment within the right-of-way, which typically would come through the Board of Public Works, or would it be granted as a discontinuance of the last piece of the street?
And what is the simplest way to accomplish it?
Not from a procedural, in terms of setting the precedent, I don't like this idea of setting a precedent of a permanent fence going across a right-of-way. We have too many temporary fences running across rights-of-way right now that are there for, for safety purposes because of building issue-related issues. So I'm not a big fan of allowing a permanent fence to be built across a public right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
That said, discontinuing the last 20 feet of the right-of-way, for
Which
instance,
everything
and
else is gone.
making the road 20 feet shorter, so the property would now be privately owned, would allow that fence to then be located on private property and not be an encroachment within the right-of-way, and perhaps allow the applicant to help to secure that pathway to the railway as well. So the applicant's property would then provide a buffer between the public right-of-way, the applicant's property, and the rail property.
Okay, so as a practical matter, because we're looking at this as a special permit to permit a use, would we have to wait until whatever steps are taken because they have to have the ability to do that to meet the conditions of the ordinance? So would we have to wait until that was accomplished procedurally, or could we make it a condition of the special permit that it could be given upon accomplishment of these steps?
I would probably defer to Attorney Barnes to answer that question from a procedural
Okay,
standpoint.
can we have a suspension of rules?
Motion
or
to suspend the necessary rules, allow Attorney Barnes to speak.
All in favor? Aye. So what would you recommend relative, just as we're considering, do we need to have these things be accomplished before we can act on the special permit? Or could we properly make it a condition of the special permit that the procedural steps be taken to accomplish the ability to have the Sally port and the access for employees?
I think it's going to get accomplished either way because they're going to need to cover their Sally port one way or the other.
Right.
So whether they have to move it and figure out a different solution, which I don't know is really possible at this location.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we had, I'm trying to remember if we had something similar at another applicant's location. Hadley Mills Road was something we had looked at, and it was a condition, I believe, where there was a discontinuance as part of that application.
Okay. Okay.
I think a condition of the application, it makes sense. It's part of what they're going to need as part of our requirements for these type of permits, so they're
Madam
going to
Chair,
need to satisfy security and things of that nature.
if I may suggest language, some language that we commonly use in planning board for these conditions is prior to an issuance of a certificate of occupancy, so that it obligates the developer to have that condition met prior to opening, which is the intent with the site plan, that before it's functional, it's been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
So you assume as the permit grantor that it will operate as you are approving it.
Okay. I'm just doing shorthand for now to basically say that we will have a condition that speaks to the proper remedies to have the operational Sally port and the employee access would be in place.
Correct.
That's just shorthand for now. Before we get done, we'll have to make it.
I think that's fair because I don't want to loop them into a discontinuance or an encroachment because I
Right.
think we're still working that out behind
Right.
the scenes. So I'd rather just make sure that they meet the requirements.
That they're able to have.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Counselor Lisi.
So a follow-up question about the Sally port and this jut on the property. Is it currently brick, or is it just an extension of some other material?
You can see on the rendering's pretty accurate. It's
I
a
do see
steel
it.
addition.
And that's what's there currently?
Yes, so parcel 3, as you can see, it's this kind of trapezoidal shape that's also owned as part of this building, which is where that currently exists. The only encroachment or discontinuance would be for the fencing area itself outside of that area.
So you would be looking to keep that structure there?
Yes.
Add the sally port and enclosure?
No, well, the sally port in this regard would just be the fenced-in area, and the existing loading dock is to remain.
Okay. So the sally port is created by the
Fence.
enclosure?
Just the fence. Yeah, there's no permanent structure. It's just a chain link fence.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Now, we do have a lengthy communication that we received today because of the revisions. So would it be prudent to run through it now, or would it be better if we all take it, have it, review it?
I was thinking of cracking a joke about going line by line, but I won't do that.
Well, highlights, but.
Is there anything outstanding
But-
still? Like
Yeah,
that?
most-
I mean,
the
because
rea-
a lot of it's very
Sure.
technical.
No, I'm not gonna go through it line by line.
But-
I'm just joking.
No,
It's not
I
fair.
know, but
What I'll say in fairness to the applicant is that most of the issues, this is basically a copy of the letter that was sent on Thursday. There was a lot of outstanding things. A lot of the things that you will see in this letter have actually been blanked out because they've addressed them. Most of the outstanding issues actually had to do with the right-of-way conversation that we already had here. The only other things that were outstanding questions for us is we didn't see the signage dimension document, so if they could talk about that. Maybe they were there, but we were in a hurry to try to review this for today. We didn't quite understand where the site visitor estimates came from. Most of that data just went out the door, right? Because they're no longer selling at the site, so we're not as worried about it. But we just
right,
weren't.
because there wouldn't be.
Right, as a manufacturer, then
Right.
presumably you don't have a lot of traffic to the site. But just understanding where they got those numbers. And as so often it happens, we have questions on trash. How's it being handled? Is it someone going there picking up? Is it being taken out of the sally port by hand and coordinated that way? Those are the only things that haven't been really encompassed by this conversation.
Sure. So the refuse will be hand trucked to the proposed dumpster pad site location within the parking area, as shown on C-4. Are you in receipt of that sheet, Marcos?
Yes, I don't have it with me, but I know that we have.
Want to make sure that you have everything that you need.
Okay.
And the other item, for refresh my memory?
Signs?
Signage.
Signage, whether there is proposed signage, what dimensions they had, just the kind of bread and butter stuff that we look at, whether it's in compliance with the zoning dimensions.
Yeah, the proposed signage is shown with the building elevations as part of the application. I believe it's a 12-inch high painted wood letter on a backer board. It's under the maximum square footage for signage by the city. And any proposed signage, it may be revised prior to completion, but it will meet all applicable codes and will be submitted to the city for review prior to installation.
So you won't be seeking a variance or
Correct.
anything?
And the trip generation was calculated by the amount of employees anticipated for the building. I believe we're at about 80, so a maximum of 160 trips, 80 in, 80 out per day, and it will likely be slightly less than that.
Okay. Right. Are there members of the public who wish to speak in favor or in opposition to this special permit for high-end? Okay, not seeing any, just wanted to be sure. Council Bartley?
Yeah, where are you in the process with the Commonwealth Control Commission?
I can take that. We're about 3 or 4 weeks away from submitting our cultivation license application, and then a few more weeks thereafter for the manufacturing license.
There was a third component on site though, right? Because you're having the kitchen.
That falls under the manufacturing license. So we would, in totality, be applying for cultivation, manufacturing. We will be applying for a research lab at this location as well. And then,
Later, right?
yeah, I mean,
Separately.
as soon as we
As
can
a
get it
separate,
done.
yeah.
But it would be a separate license. And then, of course, the retail, which we're working through that as well.
Okay,
And that
so-
will be in Holyoke.
Oh, cool. Okay, so and I forgot to say it to the other, we always appreciate your investment. Don't think we don't for a second. We always appreciate, I always say that, so you haven't applied to the CCC yet. You're a month away from your cultivation and then another period of time to manufacturing?
You know, our ideally, we would be following with the other licenses immediately thereafter, but between our consultants and technical writers and then our legal team having to review to make sure everything is in order, it does take a little bit longer. So we would like to get everything in as soon as possible. It's just a matter of getting all the pieces reviewed.
Right, okay. So, that being said, I don't feel a need to vote this out of committee tonight, and I'm hopeful that the committee members can consider that because they're not even ready to send to the CCC. We have a multi-page letter that I haven't even seen. Plus, I want to hear a little bit more about this right away, so that would give them, if we table this for 2 weeks, which is what I'm hopeful that we'll do, that we can get a little more details about some of these security issues, not the fencing security, not your business security. I mean, that's just really super critical, and a little more detail about the, I mean, I don't want to be building sidewalks for the sake of sidewalks that go nowhere. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So we're not about that. I think I heard what Mr. Parent said, it can save you possibly some money, but, you know, why are we building sidewalks that lead to railroad tracks?
Well, if I may.
You may.
With the discontinuance of the adjacent parcel, the sidewalk connection from 110 Winter Street to the main road was severed. The proposed sidewalk that we are continuing on the opposite side of the street will reestablish the connection from the primary road all the way to our site.
Got it.
So it is
Okay.
critical.
For your entry.
Yes.
No, I get it, that's important, but, you know, I think what Mr. Parent was indicating was trying to have a more economical pathway. I believe that's what you.
I think it was an offset where the applicant was originally proposing to construct a concrete sidewalk of shorter length.
Yes.
And I was requesting to get the functionality and to be consistent with the existing sidewalk along the remainder of the street, which is asphalt, not concrete.
But if the applicant wants to do that for maybe aesthetic purposes or whatever, any other reason that, you know,
Certainly could.
We're not gonna oppose that.
Right.
Are we?
No, definitely not. The sidewalk that I'm suggesting would serve as the pathway from the applicant's parking lot to the applicant's building. That would be the primary purpose of that sidewalk.
Right, so it sounds like that's what they want, what they budgeted for, and that's probably what they want to do. But you're suggesting that this asphalt sidewalk would be in addition to what they're proposing?
What the applicant has proposed is to stripe the ground surface right now, and what I'm suggesting is there really isn't a ground surface other than dirt there. So let's build a sidewalk.
I see.
Let that sidewalk serve as the hard pathway
Right.
from parking lot to building.
Okay.
In lieu of,
Well, I'll let you, I mean, I wouldn't want to condition any kind of permit on that part, but certainly on the security part and this right-of-way issue, I think that's pretty important that we get a better understanding. At least I have to get a better understanding before I vote on this. And I'm not prepared to vote on this tonight at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Lisi.
Thanks. So at 110 Winter Street, you're just looking to do the medical marijuana establishment, marijuana manufacturing establishment, and then further down the line, the research. In the small pop-out map here, it says propose RMRE location, and I think we're looking at the same building, but there may be a typo. It's on the front page.
That was from the original application where there was an RMRE present on the site, but that is no longer the case. There is no RMRE on this
So on the same building that has this odd shape with a rounded edge,
Correct.
we're just looking at MME at the present time?
Correct.
And do you have a location already decided for the RMRE that you're looking to?
Yeah, we've actually signed an LOI and are in the process of completing the lease for 384 Dwight Street.
So not too far away, but not
Oh, thank you, Linda.
not really within the same area.
We've been working with the city planners to try and solve the problems that have been coming up, and that's the cut through, that's the parking, that's the pedestrians, and we were fortunate to come upon a great location, but that's a whole other
Project.
that's a whole other project which we will be presenting. And just if I may say, with regard to the CCC application, our eagerness to get in front of the city council was because of the time that the city council takes off from July and August, so that it would sort of all fall into place come September, October, and not being delayed. But I don't understand the timing, the proper, or when we would get before, if there's a delay today, how would it proceed?
So, as it sits right now with the continuance we did on a different matter, we went to September 10th. Right? That's where it would land.
Well, that's right in their zone, so it's right, because we don't meet another time in August. We do have to thank the chair for calling this meeting, so at least I got you going.
Thank you very much.
So there's that.
Right, so on the 10th, so let's just run down, what are we looking for that we would hold the public hearing open for to the 10th? I mean, it is true that we've just received quite a lot of correspondence today, and prior to that, we had received it on Thursday. So, so if the committee does feel they need time to review it, properly, move it, I'm certainly, understanding of that. I mean, on the other hand, I can understand that from a certain point of view, it's rather straightforward. Other than the things that will happen whether we move it tonight or in 4 weeks. I mean, this is what I'm hearing. But I'll defer to the wishes of the committee. And Crystal, do you have anything to weigh in on this in terms of the status of the public hearing? I mean, it sounds like in terms of whether it's a discontinuance or an easement granting, that doesn't bear on the special permit, other than that we have to assure that both the Sally Port and the access can happen as a condition. Are there outstanding things from a public hearing point of view that we need to wait on factually or informationally from your point of view at this point?
I mean, I don't have a copy of their application to know if they met all the points. I think the planning department usually, I think they're now doing the line-by-line item check. So their letter should clarify some of that. But as far as making a condition, I think Mr. Parent kind of spoke to that they're still going to need that certificate of occupancy.
Right.
However they get there. And if it's a discontinuance, that'll come before the council as a second matter anyways, so.
Okay. And so back to Marcos, from your perspective, have all the points of the standard applications been made? Because
they have a complete.
I only heard you saying 3 outstanding items.
Well, half of the things I was going to mention was about the right of way. So, yeah, obviously that's been well discussed tonight. So from a completeness standpoint of an application, they have a complete application. The points that I brought up, I felt like they weren't clear enough, and the granting authority, the permit granting authority, would benefit from hearing a clarification, because otherwise, if you went through the letter, you'll see that it's just open questions. So whether the committee is ready to vote or not, that's up to you. But from our perspective, it's a complete submission.
Okay. So I guess as a practical matter, my feeling is that there's no reason to keep the public hearing open. However, if committee members want time to review the documents to their satisfaction, we could close the public hearing. And if the committee wishes to reconvene to make a recommendation, I mean, that is the will of the committee, but I don't see that there's more facts to be gained in the public hearing at this point, unless any member of the committee sees an arena that we have remaining facts to learn.
Well, I'd like more details on the right of way, and on the fence, and then, a little more clarification from the Board of Public Works relative to the, discontinuing a public sidewalk, or what the applicant intends to do relative to Mr. Parent's suggestion.
Right, but you don't feel that we could satisfy that concern by stipulating, I mean, from our perspective, we're not gonna determine whether it's this or that necessarily. We just have to determine that it will exist
One way or
properly.
another.
I don't think we need to determine how as a committee, do we?
No, I think that's between the professionals and the
Right.
applicant. I would rather that happen than us, but, I think from my perspective, I haven't been on the site, and I'd like to do that, because I need to see it myself, because I haven't been there. So that would help me. Now, whether or not that means I'm gonna make it, need more information through a public hearing, I can't say. But I would like to, and if we're gonna table this anyhow, I don't know why we don't just continue the public, I mean, hopefully we'll table it, but why close the public hearing if we're gonna table this? Now, if we're not gonna table this, if that's the will, then that's the will, fine, but, I know I haven't read everything, and, you know, I mean, listen, I 9 times out of 10, I mean, I've supported every single applicant that's come through here, so 10 times out of 10 I've supported it, but I think when we've kind of taken a judicious approach, that's why I supported it. I mean, whether you want to close the public hearing that's fine, but I say if we're just going to continue this to September 10th, I would say keep the public hearing open till September 10th, and then, so we can get whatever facts we can gather, and then close the public hearing then, and then vote on it then, one way or another. That would be my recommendation.
If I may. There are a few concerns in terms of construction schedule, and ignoring the CCC license application. There's exterior work that should be performed prior to winter, and postponing another month may impact that construction schedule for this year.
Well,
Are there any other questions on from members of the committee?
Well, I mean, I'll just say to the response to that is, that's on you. That's not on us.
Correct.
So, okay, so let's make that real clear. Second of all, I would make myself available for another meeting here in a week or two if that were the case. So if we could gather our facts, I'll go down there within the next 48 hours, and I'll see what I get. So I would make myself available, but that doesn't mean, you know.
Well, and that would give the ward counselor an opportunity
Yeah, so
to look over the things too, because she's usually pretty involved.
So, yeah.
And we'd be happy to help you walk through the area, and with any, be there
Right,
and make
so-
ourselves available to
So let's
anybody
do
that wants
a
to.
quick calendar confab here.
So if we can get a quorum for a week from now or 2 weeks from now, I'll be available. And we can vote on this at the first meeting in September.
So, today being the 5th, city council tomorrow, so how does August 19th or 20th look to folks?
I like the 19th.
That's 19th is a Monday, that's tough for one,
Oh.
unless we made it 7?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
I'll do the 20th, I could care less. Doesn't matter, just-
20th?
Yeah.
20th? I know Tuesdays are better, right?
What time?
6:30 then?
Doesn't matter what time.
6:30.
You want to do it earlier? I mean, if we're just going to have a limited agenda, I'll just,
You want earlier?
Whatever time is more.
On Tuesday, yeah, 6:30 then.
You want earlier?
No, I mean,
oh, if you can't, then fine. If you can be here at 6:30, then
6,
Us three are here.
6:30, yeah.
6:30?
I'll be available.
All right. All right, so make a motion.
Motion that the public hearing be continued to Tuesday, August 20th at 6:30 PM.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the public hearing is continued till 6:30, August 20th. And we'll see you then.
Okay. And Miss
Thank you.
Thank you so
Andrews or
much.
Mr. Boyle, or I didn't get your name, but I'll happily call you if I had a number, but I don't have a number. So why don't we,
Is there a number in here?
is it on?
With
Mr.
the
Mr. Boyle,
update?
I think yours is on here.
I might have a
Mine
business
is, and
card.
if you call me, I can
Why
probably
don't,
do
why don't
that.
we just do it that way? Sure. I'll call you tomorrow, sir. Thank you. Let's just make sure it's on here.
Thank you all.
Make sure,
Thank you for being flexible with the docket today. Really
Sure thing.
it's the number in Simsbury?
We really do try to be business friendly.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks. Okay, all right, thanks.
Now, poor Tanya's, oh, there she is. Now, which other item are you here for, Bob? Oh, all your
There's a
list.
lot. There's a lot.
Your list,
So
which I do have on my,
I did put a memo together. I did bring copies.
oh, you
If
did,
I'd-
bless your heart.
I'd offer that if you'd like to bring this up in 2 weeks, I'd be certainly willing, after you've had a chance to review the memo,
Perfect,
I'd be willing to do it then.
perfect.
Oh, you want to run them all down
We weren't
then?
really initially planning to meet again, but since we are,
Oh, can we run them all down then, Linda?
on the 20th,
Oh,
we'll read them, since
Oh,
we just
wonderful.
got them. Perfect.
where are they?
We have them on email from Bob, and he's going to give us that copy right now. They
Is that-
just were sent out,
Is that
what,
every other item
yesterday?
is that every other item on the agenda?
His.
Is Mr. Parent every other item?
No, there's a handful of
we
handicap
have-
placards.
But did you get my email on the handicap placards? I don't know why I saw some of your emails and not all of them, but
I did, and it sounds like the Disability Commission has had some discussion on some of the items, so that would give, the 2 weeks would give us more time for me to get up to speed on where they might be proposing changes on some of the
the three that we put on the agenda are the ones that they gave back to us with recommendations. And if you want to wait for 2 minutes, because it might be good if those are straightforward for us to just do them.
The challenge for me right now is I don't know what their recommendations are, so it's hard for me to respond to something that,
Right, but they either recommend approve it or deny it. Only on rare occasion, they say, put it across the street.
and
But
I think that
have-
was the case in one of those. Yeah.
But if you can hang on.
Sure, okay.
How about if somebody makes a motion to take up items,
15, 16, and 17?
correct.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. That way I'm properly,
Is the auditor here for something?
yes, we're gonna get to her in a sec. You're fine? Good. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so
Oh, 6, no.
3 Laurel Street, put in parentheses Charles Street.
Wow. Oh, that's,
Which is item
15, I believe.
15. Is that the one you had the question on?
That's the one I did have the question on, yes.
Okay.
should we? Go ahead, sorry.
We have the items before us, right? So I'll read it. So item 15, filed by Counselor Bartley, is ordered that a handicap sign be placed in back of 3 Charles Street for Betty Hollenbeck. Item 16, filed by Counselor Valentin, is ordered that a handicap sign be placed in front of 131 Beach Street for Juan Colon. Item 17, filed by Counselor LeBron Martinez, ordered that a handicap sign be placed in front of 372 Maple Street for Cynthia Hernandez de Leon. So the Charles Street one, the recommendation is to approve, and the recommendation was made that it be placed on Charles Street side of the building. I think that's the one that I might have been remembering across the street. I knew there was one recommendation that had what might be considered a variance. So that's,
My challenge was that 3 Charles Street doesn't exist.
okay,
So-
so the correction, so it was originally came through as 3 Laurel Street.
Yeah.
Then it was put in parentheses, Charles Street, so I think it's really 3 Laurel Street.
Yeah, I gotta believe it is 3 Laurel Street.
That was crossed out with a pencil, but the original order said Laurel.
But it's confusing the way Charles intersects with Laurel, but I'm pretty sure I know who the applicant is. And so I just sent him a text message and see if he's available to meet in the next 48 hours, and perhaps you could be there with Mr. Parent.
Sure, I don't anticipate a problem based on what I've seen in the streets. It's just ultimately I need to provide specific measurements
Exactly.
to become part of the ordinance. I don't know where,
Exactly.
what to measure to at this point. because
Exactly,
Because there shouldn't be parking on Laurel Street. It should be on Charles Street.
So,
There shouldn't be any parking on Laurel Street at that, because that's where Brown Avenue, you take that right-hand turn that nobody stops at the stop sign, sadly, and it kind of blends, so you don't really want to have parking
right.
in front of that building. It'd be more of a hazard than a help.
But I think to your point, the proper address is 3 Laurel Street, but the recommendation is that the space should be placed on Charles Street.
Charles Street, right.
So the address is properly 3 Laurel, but the recommendation
The
is
applicant's address is 3
correct.
Laurel, but
Correct.
the location of the placard.
The placement
On Charles,
of the
yes,
space.
yes. Because
He's recommending should be Charles, and it's Don Welch that goes out to these and looks at them. So, he's real familiar with what he's looking at.
Yeah, he's very good.
He would know if
But-
it could go or not.
Well, we should make sure we're on the same page with the party that's going to be affected by this, Betty. So,
2.1 that suits the party's needs. And then secondly, the language I give to city solicitor is the correct language.
Right.
So
So-
that we don't have to change that in the future.
So in the application itself, it was requested that, could I have it put on the back of the building, which is on Charles Street, from the applicant?
Yes.
And so when he went out, he essentially agreed. So properly, the address for the applicant is the 3 Laurel Street, and the placement requested is Charles Street. So my request to the committee would be just to receive and adopt the recommendations of the Disabilities Commission, which was to grant each of these. And then,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And so then we'll just move it to the council, and then you figure, because we never expect you to have the measurements and stuff ready before we send it to the council anyway.
I tried. That
I
way
don't-
it's easy at council time.
But Madam Chair, aren't we supposed to have the measurements at City Council?
Well, at city council, but not before we have this meeting.
I know, but that's tomorrow, the City Council might be.
Well, I know, but
We can approve it and not get measurements until the first meeting in September.
Right.
Part of the challenge here is there's some orders that we're not seeing. So the first I was aware of these was actually reading it on the agenda Friday night. So it doesn't allow for a lot of time to.
Right,
It's
but
kinda
I
it's
just,
kind of like we get your letters today. I mean, it's kind of, see how that works?
but,
I took Saturday off, sorry.
Man, it's supposed to-
and I took yesterday off, so I didn't read them all. But we don't expect you to have
Sure.
the measurements immediately after we accept the recommendation of the Disabilities Commission. There's typically been times where we have to just wait to get that done, right? I mean, we don't expect you to have it tomorrow.
I mean, usually we have a week's turnaround, but I will say tomorrow I'm in court for
Yeah.
most of the morning, so.
But no, I mean, I didn't expect, I just figured if we had the recommendations back from disabilities, let's move it so it's not sitting in the jacket. But I didn't think you'd necessarily have everything buttoned up for tomorrow night.
If I can, I'd like to
All
move
right.
it along as well, so.
But hey, yeah,
So we'll
bless your
just
heart.
put- So we'll just put on the agenda, we might have to table it tomorrow.
We might,
Yeah,
but
Okay,
if we do, we do. It's okay.
yeah.
All right?
All right, is that it?
Now we have
Tanya.
Oh, we're gonna take
So
up
the-
the rest of your items on the 10th.
Good,
I'm sorry.
20th,
20th.
right?
20th.
20th.
yes,
20th.
fine with me.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
thanks for the feedback, and we appreciate it. Okay.
Motion to take 6 off the table?
Second.
All in favor? Item 6, filed by Counselor McGee, that the auditor come before ordinance to address all payment in lieu of tax programs in the city. Do you want to come on in, Tanya? Again, thank you for your patience, but usually Bob is last, so he gets to leave before you tonight. He started early. He started way early. Thanks again.
Bob, if you're available tomorrow morning, we can meet there tomorrow if you want. If you want to just text me or something or whatever. Or tomorrow afternoon. I'm just at my shop tomorrow.
Thanks.
No, Charles and Laurel. Yeah, you just text me or whatever. Oh. Is this an update, Tanya?
Yes, it is.
Oh, boy.
So between the solicitor's office, the assessors, and my office, we got together. I know you had talked about some of the newer pilot programs, so we have all those down for you with the dates that the contracts began. The ones on the top are older contracts that I haven't been able to locate the actual document itself. I'm sure they're out there, but we have a lot of newer people. These seem like they'd be really old.
Mm-hmm.
And at the bottom is some new pilot programs that will come into play in fiscal year 2020.
Do we, the city council, do we have to approve these? Crystal?
Pilot? Silence.
No?
Those come to us.
I thought.
They come to us.
If I may.
Sure.
So I think that the pilots that we've seen are the ones that are related to the solar, because that was a condition that we created in the ordinance that we wrote, that they develop a pilot and come into some sort of pilot agreement with the city. But otherwise, it's like a contract, so we don't actually develop the pilot language. We would just approve the special permit, and we saw the pilot agreement as part of the special permit process for the solar facilities that we granted.
Right, but we were also at some point provided language for pilots, that there was a standardized.
That was for the solar.
Pilot.
It was all for the solar, though.
Made. Mm-hmm.
So included in this is all of the fiscal year payments to date. Every single one of the contracts were current except for this Healthy Plant Partners rooftop, which I did speak to the assessor about, and he is going to send them out a reminder just to pay it, because the contracts kind of allow for them to be responsible, so if we're not following up regularly, so we're going to just put a reminder to send out in the mail to people just to make sure, because I mean things can be missed.
So I just have a question. So these are all the pilots that we know of?
They're all what is current in our system.
Yeah, and so if anything was missed, it would just be that it hadn't been given over to your department at the time that some pilot was developed. So if there was anybody that had an awareness of a pilot that somehow didn't get in the system, it would just have to be brought to your attention to get put in. And I'm just speaking theoretically, I don't know of any.
Well, what the process is that we actually would receive the revenue, and I'm pulling this by a revenue code.
Gotcha.
So if the revenue was miscoded, then it could be in another revenue code. I mean, we do audit it, so we hope that doesn't happen. And normally, somebody will be looking for the payment, like the assessor's office, or
Right.
and so we can
Tax
research
collector.
it and find it. But
Right.
it all looks like, compared to what everybody had for contracts, this looks like it's good information.
Good. So I'm not
But I've
really
seen.
sure what prompted Counselor McGee to file this. I wasn't sure if he thought some weren't missing, or he was just interested to know how much it is. I'm really not sure what his motivation is
Well, I
for
think
it, but
I think some of it came out of looking at the budget, and I think Counselor Sullivan made some points about the G&E and their pilot being somewhat small in relation to the services that they're getting from the city, and likewise, I think there's been a lot of conversation in the community about the Housing Authority having a very small pilot, and when you look at the dates, that was just amended in 2017, and the Housing Authority is certainly benefiting from a number of city services, including sewer, water, trash pickup.
Yeah, we can't complain about HG&E when we look at the Housing Authority.
Right. But I don't know if it seems like you didn't find a date for the start of that G&E pilot.
I did not.
Can't find the
We're on a
contract.
search still.
They might have it, or a copy of it.
Please.
But anyway, thank you for updating this and getting us the rest of the information.
Absolutely.
And this should be available for everybody at City Council tomorrow. So I think we can say this is complied with.
Yeah,
Just
so
one more question, Tanya, if you don't mind. So
Not at all.
I see that the blank is here, but I feel the need to ask. So this Housing Authority pilot was agreed to and amended in 2017, but there was no termination date?
What it says is each fiscal year until they're not able to or it's not feasible. I believe that's what I read in the terms of the contract.
So no end date?
There was no, unless it was an oversight on my part, but I did read a couple of them just to see.
Sounds like it's rolling as able.
Right.
Yeah.
And you see some with amendments, like an amendment here and there too, so I'm not really familiar with the contracts, but.
Yeah, I think that so along with the order that Mike Sullivan's going to file to, revisit the pilot for the G&E, I think we should be looking at the Housing Authority's pilot to see if there's room.
If they have all this cash to buy land and everything, they can be paying us pilots.
And what's the one with Holyoke Health Center? I'm just estimated yearly. What does that mean? So they just started apparently. So we don't.
Yeah,
know.
they haven't paid yet. They'll pay this year.
So we have we don't have a guess or.
I believe the assessor probably could provide more information on that.
Because they're going to pay half of what the going
They're
rate would have
assessed
been if they weren't
value.
charitable?
Correct.
Well, I don't know if that's the half of value. So maybe it's a flat payment, like half of what their value is, as opposed to a rate per thousand on the value. Right, we'll have to find out.
Right. Because I don't know that either.
Right.
I don't know what it's even assessed at. So.
And all pilot revenues go into the general fund?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Can
you.
we have
Have
a
a good
motion
night.
on that?
That'd be complied with?
Motion received, or complied with, whatever.
All in favor? Aye. We'll call it complied with. Thank you very much. All right, so then we just, I think, have to have a vote to table those other items.
Well, we didn't take them up, so.
Well, hang on
Do
a
that all
second,
the
I
time.
just want to look at them, I just want to. Does everybody have this from Bob?
I don't. No.
I think you
Did everybody take one?
You have it.
Okay. So Terry doesn't have them, but
Keep a copy.
Hmm?
Keep a whole pack of everything for
for
him.
him, it's like, okay, let's give that pile to Terry. Whoops, oh, good save. And let's see, we must have another packet, this, for Terry.
You in there?
Not giving him mine, am I?
Where does he sit, right here?
Yeah. At the end, yeah. All right, where's my agenda?
All right, so.
Hang on, I just want to look at,
Is that a wrap?
hang on. Do you want to deal with the minutes? Because Ryan sent them to us early enough where we could.
I'm going to say, let's just call it a wrap, and we'll deal with the minutes at the next meeting.
I agree.
Okay, 2, 3. So can I just have a motion to table items 7 through, oh, can we please deal with 12? It's simple, read it, complied with.
Okay. Motion to take up item number
Seriously.
12?
On favor?
Aye.
Filed by Joe McGivern, hereby established and maintained for fiscal year in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, a Police Department Auxiliary Services Revolving Fund. If we all recall, this was handled in another way through the police department.
Yep.
So we do not need the revolving
Yes.
fund.
Okay.
So we can just call this
Leave to
either
withdraw?
leave to withdraw or complied with, whatever is your preference.
Motion comply with.
I mean, the goal of what it was to be for is accomplished.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then, so items 7 through 11,
Motion to table item number 1, 7 through 11,
and
and 13, and 14.
yes. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And we'll take those up on the 20th. So we have our agenda for the 20th.
Great.
All in favor?